Salute, salute, salute. What's up, y'all? Shout out to everybody in the building. What's up, what's up, what's up? Get this right. What's up, what's up, what's up, y'all? You know what I'm saying? Shout out to everybody in the building, man. We got a couple of topics on the table. As we know, Trump has signed the bill to release the Epstein files. But it seems that they want them censored, aka redacted, in some form. There are people pushing for them to not be redacted. They want them in their entirety, which led me to basically put this poll up asking, do you think the files will be released in their entirety, unredacted? You know what I'm saying? I don't know what a lot of y'all think out there. That's why I put it on the poll. Make sure you vote on the poll. What's up, K-Cell? Yo, yo, yo. What's up, Mahel? Salute, my brother. Salute, K-Cell. We most definitely in the building, my guy. We also have other things. It seems that Trump has seemingly threatened the Democrats, y'all, with jail time, or sending them to jail for some odd reason. I got some on that, as well as what Trump actually said, how the Republicans feel about it, and how the Democrats feel about it. We also have an interview of Epstein's ex-wife, basically telling her story, about Trump and Epstein. With a couple of other things, y'all. Caroline Leavitt in her press conference yesterday that she did from the White House, where she also discussed the releasing of the Epstein files and a couple of other priorities that are on the table with the White House, man. Y'all know how this go, man. Make sure y'all double tapping that screen, and make sure you subscribing to the channel if you are new. And without further ado, let's get off into it, man. This says Trump signs bill to release Justice Department's Epstein files, guys.
President Trump has announced on Truth Social that he has signed the bill to release the Epstein files. There's the Truth Social post. This move by the president comes after the House and Senate passed the bill this week, sending it to the president's desk. He writes, perhaps the truth about these Democrats and their associations with Jeffrey Epstein will soon be revealed because I have just signed the bill to release the Epstein files. Now, again, it's something that we've been covering throughout the day. The timing has been a big question mark. It appears as though the president has signed it almost immediately after making its way to the desk. We saw that that bill passed the House and Senate this week. Trump has been facing increased political pressure in recent months, growing resistance from both sides of the aisle. And again, we have seen the president now taking to his social media account, Truth Social, and saying that he has signed the bill. We are awaiting any more information on whether that bill was signed in front of cameras or possibly if there were photographers in the Oval Office when this happened. But so far, all we have seen is this Truth Social.
And that's what they saying. He posted to his Truth Social media that he signed the bill. The only problem was there were no cameras there or no footage of him doing so. So people are unsure whether he really signed it or not, according to them. That's why he's asking these questions about, was there, media in there? Was there someone taking photos? Is there a video or anything of him actually signing these files besides just his word of him saying that he did it? What is bill?
Post. But again, this all comes after a lengthy debate, after pressure from Republicans in the House and in the Senate, as well as Democrats in the House and Senate, all calling for the Epstein files to be released. There are also big questions on exactly what may be redacted when it comes to these files.
There you go. The redactions, guys. That's another thing that's been on people's mind. About the redactions. Hold on, let me put this where we can get it big on the screen of exactly what Trump said as they tell us about it. This is Trump's official statement regarding the signing of this bill for the Epstein files to be released, man. You know what I'm saying? Giving y'all a second to be able to look at it, and perhaps read what some of it says. This is him posting to his Truth Social about him signing the Epstein files, guys.
that we know have been in the possession of the Department of Justice for quite some time. The Department of Justice saying that they had looked at the case and they were not proceeding with it because there was no new evidence months ago. Now they're saying that there has been new evidence that has come to light, but they have not really specified on what that is.
Thank you, Ms.
It looks like
Boober.
we're looking at another Truth Social poster. This is the Truth Social post that was just posted. Jeffrey Epstein, who was charged by the Trump Justice Department in 2019, parentheses, not the Democrats, was a lifelong Democrat, donated thousands of dollars to Democrat politicians, and was deeply associated with many well-known Democrat figures, such as Bill Clinton, who traveled on his plane 26 times, Larry Summers, who just resigned from many boards, including Harvard, sleazebag political activist Reid Hoffman, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who asked Epstein to donate to his campaign after Epstein was charged, Democrat Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, and many.
You hear him bring up Hakeem Jeffries, that's what led Jeffries to basically do his little spiel about what actually took place with him between him and Jeffrey Epstein regarding those campaign donations.
Others. Perhaps the truth about these Democrats and their association with Jeffrey Epstein will soon be revealed because I have just signed the bill to release the Epstein files. This is the president posting on Truth Social. He goes on to say, as everyone knows, I asked Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune to pass the bill in the House and Senate respectively. Because of this respect, the votes were there. And again, these are all things that we're reading right now as we get them from Truth Social. Truth Social is the president's social media platform. It's often the first place he goes to make.
Let's make sure we double tapping that screen, guys. Get the likes up. Also, make sure you're subscribing to the channel if you are new, guys. This is everything I have on the bill signing, as well as the threats that Trump potentially made to Democrats, guys, that y'all been hearing about.
Announcements, bypassing the other social media accounts that the White House and the president has, and we are now seeing those trickle out across social media. But again, breaking news tonight, President Trump has signed the bill that just came to him that has to do with the Department of Justice releasing the Epstein files. Now, there are some caveats in the legislation that went to the president for his signature. We don't know if he used any line item vetoes, but we do know that some of those caveats were there to, as lawmakers said, protect some information from getting out that had to do with the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. But there are big questions tonight on whether some of those caveats or possibly a review by the Department of Justice could result in parts of the Jeffrey Epstein files being redacted. There are also questions over oversight. Who has oversight about those redactions? What will constitute classified information, and whether any of that may have to do with the President of the United States. But once again, we have breaking news tonight. President Donald Trump signing the bill to release the Epstein files. All of this is developing through the night. We are reaching out to several reporters on the Capitol Hill. We have Garrett Hake, I understand, who's just probably hearing about this news as well. I believe Garrett joins us from the phone. Garrett, shockwaves going out right now, but this is not unexpected. We've heard the president say several times he was going to be signing this bill. We just didn't know about the timing of it. What's your reaction to this tonight?
Yeah, I mean, Gotti, I would say not unexpected since about Friday. But if you were to think back to where we were over the summer when the Justice Department first announced that there would be no release and the political backlash first began, we have come a very long way in the evolution of the thinking on this by President Trump. This signing statement attempts to rewrite the political history of this entire episode a little bit, with the president focusing on his 11th hour appeal to House Republicans at first to pass this bill. Then his comments really almost entirely referring to comments he made in the Oval Office on Monday, suggesting that Senate Republicans had signed this. He told me when I asked him about this that sure, he would sign it, suggesting this is something he has wanted all along. Now he's trying to turn the tables politically on Democrats, whom he blames for all of this, suggesting that they will, regret opening this Pandora's box, and that the contents of these documents or the way in which they might be perceived by the public will ultimately damage Democrats more than him. And Gotti, I've been talking to people around the president about this. I spoke to a senior White House official about it today. He's been enormously frustrated by this whole episode. He views it as a huge distraction from what he believes are the achievements of the second term. He believes that congressional Republicans have been weak and stupid in the views of those around him, and occasionally from the president's own mouth, basically allowing this distraction to fester. He compares it to the Russia investigation that consumed so much oxygen during his first term. I think he and the White House hope that with this signing tonight that the pressure will be off of him. But the president has also acknowledged repeatedly in public, including as recently as yesterday, that for some people, including Republicans, nothing will ever be quite good enough. No amount of disclosure will be sufficient. There will never be complete trust in what the government puts out, and that the conspiracies surrounding Jeffrey Epstein will live on no matter what is released. And so I think I see in this long Truth Social post from the president acknowledging that he has signed this bill tonight elements of frustration, resignation, and an effort to capitalize politically on a moment that has been a long time coming, and now this sort of effort to pivot it to his own political advantage.
So Trump did sign the bill,
in that
guys.
pivot, do you think that we will see him possibly assume a front and center role? I mean, in the past, it seems as though he's wanted to deflect attention from this, saying that people don't care, people should move on. But if the DOJ is releasing these files, and there are the names of politicians, including Democrats and possibly Republicans, in there, can you see him possibly holding events at the Oval Office and highlighting certain names here?
Hey guys, if you're in the building, let's take a second to double tap that screen. That's how you hit the like button. If you're on a mobile device, double tap that screen or click those three dots in the right hand corner, guys, and hit the thumbs up. It helps out the channel. It's 198 people in here right now and only 23 likes. So let's get the likes up, guys. Double tap the screen on your mobile device. That's how you can hit the like button, or click those three dots, hit that thumbs up. And remember to subscribe to the channel if you're new. This is everything I know about Trump signing his bill for the Epstein files to be released, as well as Trump allegedly giving threats to the Democrats, guys. I got, what he said, the Republicans' response to it, as well as the Democrats' response to it. And some of Epstein's victims speak out as well, guys. Got a lot going on here. Make sure you double tapping that screen. If you're on a mobile device, or clicking those three dots, hitting that thumbs up, guys. Support the channel.
I think that's unlikely, but not impossible, and here's why. Donald Trump never cared about the Epstein files as much as some of the people around him did during the course of the campaign. This was never something he sort of intentionally campaigned to answer questions about it. He allowed others of his supporters to kind of run with the football on this issue. It's not something that I think personally excites him in the same way that talking about trade or even his own politically motivated campaigns against other individuals. This has never captured his imagination in the same way. Secondarily,
y'all know what? I forgot to do something that I need to do real quick. Hold on. Give me a second, y'all. Give me a hot second real fast. I most definitely need to take care of this right now. Hold on. Give me a second. You know what I'm saying? Hold on. Hold on. I need to take care of this right now. It's very important. Something I forgot to do when I first set up this live. Now I got to go back and do it. Where is it at? Guess I didn't. Okay, we good. Hold on.
If his Department of Justice and FBI are to be believed for what they said in July when they first said they would not be releasing these files, there is not information in these files sufficient to open criminal investigations into anyone. Remember, that was what the DOJ and the FBI said in that joint statement explaining why they wouldn't be releasing this information. What is left, if not sufficient to open investigations criminally, is likely to be simply embarrassing, possibly to him, possibly to some of these major Democratic figures. And so I think it's possible you might see the president use his social media account, make comments where possible to try to use whatever may come out here to score points to damage Democratic figures like the former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, who's been caught up in the most recent disclosure from Epstein's estate. I think is a good example. But in terms of trying to take this into the political spotlight, I don't think it's on the list of the top 5 things the president most wants to talk about. And unless there is a political enemy specifically of his named in some particularly embarrassing way in whatever does ultimately come out, I just don't think it's his weapon of choice going forward either.
And if I understand this correctly, at this point, the 30-day timer
They're
kicks
explaining
in,
what's going
and
on with the
DOJ
signing
has,
of the bills,
I believe
guys.
30 days to release these files. Where does that all come from? Who's heading up the review of these files, and what could we see in the next month or so?
Yeah, that is a great question, and it's one that we don't have a totally clear answer to. Now, we know that the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, kind of put her at the center of this early in the Trump administration when she first claimed that the files were sitting on her desk and ready for release. You know, they obviously did in the Department of Justice some work in terms of organizing these things and redacting them to do the limited release that they did to a group of conservative influencers in the spring. So some of this work has already been done by different elements of the Justice Department. I think the White House will likely try to shift the focus of this to the DOJ, who is the keeper of all of this material, and sort of let this, wash their hands of it, let this be their problem to sort out what comes out and when. In terms of the type of documents in here, it's a tough question to answer because we really don't know what we don't know. We can speak broadly about some of the types of things that we may find out about. For example, electronic devices, hard drives seized by the FBI when Epstein was arrested back in 2019. Those contents have never seen the light of day. Those could be very interesting. Think about the information that became public from Jeffrey Epstein's estate in recent days of his various emails and correspondence. If there's more material like that, it could be of great public interest. The other thing that our law enforcement experts here at NBC News have talked about that would be of great interest to them is something called FBI 302 forms. These are basically the intake forms, if you will, that an FBI agent might prepare if he or she brings you in for an interview. It's not a transcription. It's not the complete contents of your interview, but it might be, I, Agent Garrett, brought in, Guy Schwartz today for an interview. We talked about this, this, and this. It doesn't necessarily include the follow-up.
For getting that membership, Thugger.
This is the kind of thing that is not typically released for this reason, that it might be perceived as almost defamatory. If I tell an FBI agent I saw this, this, and this, but those things don't ultimately check out, if those are dead leads, that never comes public in a criminal case. That kind of information typically never sees the light of day. But a lot of that type of information still exists in a file like this. And so we might see leads that investigators pursued, things that they ultimately found not credible, but you might not be able to follow all of those pieces through the files. And so you're going to get little pops of investigative information along the way that could be very interesting, but also potentially, perceived as derogatory towards the people being investigated, even if they were later cleared. And the third thing that I think will be a lot of interest to people, Gotti, are the manner of communications, which is the internal communications at the DOJ and FBI about why they did what and when. This bill calls for those types of communications to be made public, which we almost never see in a federal criminal case. Why was this charging decision made or not? Why was this decision to interview this person made or unmade? The sausage making of a federal prosecution will be fascinating on its own, let alone considering the, high stakes of the people and places involved.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on.
All right, so that was a little bit on Trump signing that bill, guys. The Epstein bills. Now, understand that the Democrats wanted to come out unredacted, but Trump and the Republicans are saying they are following the law, and may redact some things, guys. They saying that it's investigation going on against the Democrats that was involved as well, which could delay the release of these files, guys. So we could get them in the next 30 days, or it could take even more time for the files to actually be released. And if they are released, they might be heavily redacted, guys. Which to lead us to the point of why releasing them if you ain't going to show or tell us anything. All right. Caroline Leavitt also gave a speech from the White House, basically a press conference where she updated us on the situation with the Epstein files, as well as the process that it could take in order to release them.
Traveled to Marine Corps Air Station New River and Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, where they spent the day meeting with students, educators, military families, and United States Marines. Both the First Lady and Second Lady were grateful for the warm welcome and remain deeply committed to supporting military families and the communities that serve our great nation. May God bless all of them. In economic news, the September jobs report showed the American economy remains strong, with 119,000 new jobs added, more than double expectations. These gains came after the summer passage of President Trump's historic tax cuts and multiple big trade deals with countries around the world. In particular, construction jobs surged by 19,000 in September, the largest monthly gain in a year. Nearly all of this solid monthly job growth came from the private sector and went to Americans rather than foreign-born workers, the opposite of what we saw under the previous administration. Inflation also remains under control, and wages are up by 3.8% over the year for American workers because of President Trump's pro-growth policies. In fact, real wages are on pace to increase roughly $1,200 for the average worker this year under President Trump. This is a complete reversal of the failed Biden era, when we saw inflation skyrocket to 9%, causing private sector workers to see their wages decline by approximately $3,000. We know that Americans are still hurting from the 4-decade high inflation caused by Joe Biden and the Democrats. But President Trump is making significant progress to fix this, and he will not stop working until he solves it. As the president recently stated, he is never satisfied. For example, President Trump's policies are working to make Americans' Thanksgiving more affordable this year, from their commute to the dinner table. Nearly 100 million Americans are expected to drive next week to spend time with loved ones for the holiday. And thanks to President Trump's Drill Baby Drill agenda, the national average price of a gallon of gas on Thanksgiving Day is projected to be at the cheapest price since the COVID pandemic in 2021. President Trump is bringing down gas prices and providing significant savings to American families at the pump. And again, we expect those prices to continue to decline. According to the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual survey, cooking Thanksgiving dinner will also cost less this year than it did last year and is down about 5% overall. The average price for a staple of the meal, a 16-pound frozen turkey, is down more than 16% from last year, which will provide critical savings for families and their budgets. President Trump's entire economic agenda is aimed at putting more money back into the pockets of hardworking Americans. That's why he signed the largest middle tax cuts in history into law, from no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, to no tax on Social Security. And according to a new study from Piper Sandler, which is out this week, tax filers can expect an extra $1,000 bump to their tax refund next year, and what could be a record-breaking tax refund season.
Wow.
So there is more good news to come. We know these refunds will make a huge difference for Americans to help pay down their bills and use towards life's expenses. In other news this week, President Trump took a significant step toward delivering on a core campaign promise to finally close the Department of Education. To shrink the bloated federal bureaucracy, the Department of Education just entered into new interagency agreements with 4 agencies: the Departments of Labor, Interior, Health and Human Services, and State. These agencies will now ensure the delivery of legally required programs while also refocusing them to better serve students. This common sense action brings the Trump administration much closer to finally returning education where it belongs, at the state and local level, not in Washington, D.C. The Democrats' reckless 43-day government shutdown did manage to do one valuable thing. It proved that America does not need a federal Department of Education. During the longest shutdown in history, the Department of Education furloughed 90% of its staff, and America's education system was not impacted whatsoever. Schools stayed fully open across the country. Students attended class and received normal in-person instruction, and our wonderful teachers received their paychecks uninterrupted. The Democrats' government shutdown made it painfully obvious that American families do not need the Department of Education. Since its creation in 1979 during the Carter administration, the Department of Ed has spent over $3 trillion taxpayer dollars without improving student achievement. Despite peer pupil spending having increased by more than 245% since the 1970s, math and reading scores are down in public schools. In fact, the most recent Nation's Report Card from 2024 showed that 13-year-olds' math scores are the lowest they've been in decades, and their reading scores are the lowest since testing began more than 30 years ago. It's clear that throwing more money at a broken system does not work, and that's why President Trump appointed the amazing leader behind me, our Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, who is making these monumental changes at the direction of the president. We're very grateful to have you here today to talk about these changes and then take some questions. Hopefully folks in this room will have some questions on the very important topic of education. So please, Mrs. Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Caroline. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today, and thank all of you for being here as well. My purpose here is to speak directly to the American families, not just you, but to the American families, about the work this administration is doing in education to reverse our national decline with a hard reset of our educational system. That reset was a top campaign promise from President Trump to send education back to the states and end Washington's micromanagement of education once and for all. This week, we took the most decisive steps thus far to make good on this promise to you. We have linked 6 groundbreaking partnerships with other federal agencies to delegate education department programs that are redundant with existing programs at Labor, State, Interior, and HHS. These interagency agreements to cut our own bureaucratic bloat are a key step in our efforts to shift educational authority from Washington, D.C. to your state education agency, your local superintendent, your local school board, entities that are accountable to you, and we encourage parents to always be involved. Cutting federal bureaucracy is never a popular move among D.C. insiders. A chorus of anti-Trump voices have come out of the woodwork to complain that we are defunding education, harming students, or acting without a plan. This could not be further from the truth. The majority of Americans across the country handed to President Trump the popular vote precisely because they have seen the brokenness of a top-down education system run by the federal government. They're painfully aware that only 3 out of 10 students can read proficiently at their grade level. They know that college students are collectively $1.7 trillion in debt, and less than half of college graduates get a job that actually uses the degree which they studied so hard to get. They see more teachers than ever before leaving the profession due to burnout, over-regulation, and lack of autonomy in the classroom. Anti-Trump voices are stirring up fear that returning education to the states is a draconian action. When Americans hear that we are shutting down the department, but given no other details, 51% oppose it. But when those same Americans are informed of our plans to preserve important elements of our work in other federal agencies and to maintain the K-12 funding that is distributed to the states, that number flips to an even greater majority at 56%. They support returning education to the states and breaking up the bureaucracy. That's because the Department of Education is a pass-through entity. It doesn't educate a single student. The money it sends to states for education can be sent directly without waste. The Democrats' government shutdown proved that without a doubt, and I'll reiterate what you said, that the Department of Education was not necessary during the shutdown. Now, this is what I've seen already on my 50-state tour that I've embarked on. Educators are innovating in their schools. States are customizing their budgets and standards, and post-secondary institutions are planning for the economy of the future. But we're not leading them. They are informing us. That's why our final mission as a department is to fully empower states to carry the torch of our educational renaissance. Education is local. It should be overseen locally by those who best know local needs. We're not ending federal support for education. We are ending federal micromanagement and paving the way for education renewal through state reforms like school choice, the science of reading, and restoring the right priorities in higher education. President Trump promised to send education back to the states, and we're keeping that promise. America's next generation will look back on the work we've carried out, thankful for an education system that prioritizes students over bureaucracy. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Secretary. And we'll take some questions for the Secretary if you have them. Elizabeth, why don't you start?
Thank you for joining us. You announced the partnership to move some functions of the Education Department to other agencies. Are you talking to members of Congress about codifying this so that it lasts beyond the administration?
Yes, we started our conversation, and thanks very much for asking that, because there have been some reports that Congress is in the dark on this. That's clearly not true. We've been talking to, I've talked to dozens of members of Congress to explain to them exactly what we're doing, to bring them up to speed, and to say to them, look, when we have completed some of these transfers that are working incredibly well, then we will be looking to Congress to codify those, make them permanent.
Brian.
Thank you, Secretary McMahon. What is the update on the negotiations with Harvard? I know the president has publicly pointed to you as somebody who's worked on that. I think you've talked about that at length, but I'd like to understand where are things with those negotiations with Harvard this time?
They're ongoing negotiations, and I feel very comfortable that we are getting close to having those negotiations finalized. It's been an open door conversation all along.
Deanne?
Hello, Mrs. Secretary. The President recently posted about establishing a federal standard for AI. Do you know if the administration has a view on the use of AI for students in schools? And Caroline, do you know if the President personally uses AI?
I don't think so.
You can handle
I've never
that one.
witnessed it, so I can't attest to that.
Well, I do think AI is going to need guardrails, but I have witnessed AI firsthand. I was at the Alpha School in Austin, Texas, and the first 2 hours of every day in that school, students are learning through AI. They have their headsets on, they're in front of their screens, and the AI is really acting as like an individual tutor for those students, allowing those students that can progress faster to do that. Those who need a little catch up, it refeeds information to them. And so after those 2 hours of learning, the basics of what they're doing in their curriculum that day, then they spend the rest of the day, they have good recess and all of that time, but then they spend the rest of the day in what are called life skills, and they're actually using the information that they've learned this morning. So I've seen some AI in action that is really proving quite beneficial.
Michael.
Thank you, Caroline. Secretary McMahon, as the Education Department continues to pare down, can you talk about taxpayer services like charter school grants and how the department will continue to assist kids with special needs?
Well, we are going to make sure that there's no interruption in getting that grant money out the door. That money is it comes from Congress. It's appropriated by Congress, and we legally are obligated to do that. And the transitions we're starting to make, our first programs that went over to the Department of Labor, that was a few weeks ago. We actually signed the first interagency agreement, which we accomplished under the authority of the Economy Act. we transferred grants for WIOA and for the Perkins Act. And the really good news is that the Department of Labor has a much more sophisticated system, technology system and grant fulfilling system than the Department of Education does. As a matter of fact, our executive manager that went over with that group over to labor said he would compare what the labor system is to education's like held together by bubble gum that is not connected to any other part. So we were able to get those grants out the door more smoothly, and states have actually better access for those systems than they do at the Department of Education. So that's a real bonus.
Take a couple more. Carrie, go ahead.
As far as the diversity, equity, and inclusion new regulations that came out from the administrations, a lot of schools, whether high school or even higher education is concerned, some of them are defying these new administration policies, even apparently according to a new report.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Rick.
As far as there's been a new report from the administration saying that half of medical schools are defying the administration when it comes to DEI policies. What type of action will the administration take for these schools that are defying the new DEI policies?
Well, certainly the president has been very clear, and the Department of Education has taken measures to make sure that as schools are developing, their policies, or if they have open DEI offices, they're closed, or DEI regulations and rules are stripped, from their programs, and so that will continue.
Great. We'll take one more. Go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. Secretary McMahon, my question is, since you said 3 out of 10 students are literate with regard to their reading capacity, would now the states help to improve those numbers since you've gone back to the states?
Well, what we are finding that the states that are making great progress, it's through their own innovation. It's not coming from the Department of Education. I think the Department of Education is really misunderstood about what our function is. We don't teach one student. We have nothing to do with the curriculum that are in any states. We are a pass-through pathway from money that's appropriated by Congress to get to the states. But what we have seen in those states that have taken that initiative and they are embracing the science of reading and returning that into their school programs. Louisiana has done it. Mississippi, they call it the Mississippi Miracle, because they were I think bottom or next to last in reading proficiency in Mississippi, and now they're middle of the pack, which has been a really big jump. Florida has, Iowa has, Tennessee. But these are innovations that are done at the state level. This is not anything we're dictating, and that's why I'm saying returning education to the states where they really are already leading in their education endeavors, and 90% of their budget they provide. The federal government only provides 8 to 10% of the budget for education, so let's make sure that grant money that's coming from the federal government is getting in their hands as efficiently as possible and getting to students. We don't want teachers having to spend their time and money in regulatory compliance. There was one superintendent chief who said to me that they had done some calculation in their state, and that for every dollar that went into the classroom in a grant, 47 cents was spent in regulatory compliance. So let's get the money into the hands of our students and our teachers. Let's raise the level of education. The other thing I'll do, and I'll quickly wrap up for you, is this 50-state tour that I have embarked on. We've done about 14 states. We've shut down a little bit during the shutdown. But what I am doing is visiting different kinds of schools, grammar schools, middle schools, high schools, micro schools, private schools, charter schools, the whole gambit. And in the end, my goal will be, as we step away and fully deliver education back to the states, is to provide them with a best practices toolkit of all of the things that I have seen around the country to say, hey, this is working. Check with these superintendents, check with these governors. And what I found a little bit is governors are a little competitive. So it's kind of nice to give some of these best practices out there. It'll work because it's already working. If we leave it with the people who are closest to the students, the president believes, as do I, the best education is that's closest to the child, and parents' involvement is critical to the success.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Linda. Thank you so much. I appreciate your comments today. Thanks for your great work. And
Thank you all very much.
A busy lady, so we'll let her get back to work. All right. Thank you again. Well, let's get to it. You guys were so calm with her. I wish you were that calm with me. We'll kick off with our new media suite as always. Javier, why don't you start us off and then we'll get to the rest of the room. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Javier Negre. I'm from Spain. I'm the owner of the biggest media platform in Hispanic politics.
Make sure y'all double tap that screen, guys. Get the likes up. Thank you, Flip Mode.
Plus for Visegrad in Spanish. And I'm happy to be here. Thanks for supporting the new media. Also in the Hispanic community, we try to fight against media like Telemundo, Univision, CNN or NBC News that are spreading fake news and attacking the ICE operations. We will premiere this Sunday the Real America's Voice, the rainy show, the first Hispanic show against communism and woke culture that is promoted by people like George Soros to bring communism all over the world like happened in New York. I have two questions for you, if you don't mind. In Mexico, the young people is protesting against President Sheinbaum. They think she's doing nothing against the cartels. Sheinbaum used the police to attack them, young people, kids, girls, and she's attacking journalists like me in a country where 150 journalists have been killed in the past years. The USA legacy media is attacking President Trump for his comments about the fake news media, while they are not publishing anything about the murders of journalists in Mexico. Why do you think they stay silent about the murders of journalists in Mexico and the attacks to businessmen like Ricardo Salinas? And my second question is, Trump say he has a plan for the narco state of Venezuela. Does he have a plan for Mexico where, according to Stephen Miller, the cartels are controlling governments and territories?
Sure. Well, thank you, Javier, for the question, and thank you again for being here. We're proud to have new media voices in the briefing room. As for President Sheinbaum and the president's relationship with Mexico, I will tell you that we have seen historic strides from President Sheinbaum and her administration in Mexico when it comes to cracking down on the cartels. They have been incredibly cooperative with the president's efforts at our southern border to crack down on illegal immigration and also the illegal trafficking of drugs at the southern border. Now the president is very interested in taking additional measures against the drug cartels. He's been very clear about that. He's spoken about it, and this is a promise that he made to the American public. And so his national security team is discussing these options all of the time. And on the campaign trail, the president promised to take on the cartels. He has taken unprecedented action to do so, and he has left additional options at his disposal on the table. So those are only decisions that the president can make. Thank you.
The silence of the legacy media about the murders of journalists in Mexico. 150 journalists have been killed in the past years.
Yeah, well, it's certainly something I wish the media would report on more, and it's something that this administration absolutely condemns. I can't speak for the media, but I can speak for the president. That's not something he wants to see. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. Is there anything that Mayor-elect Mamdani could say tomorrow that would ease the president's concerns about his future leadership in New York?
Look, I don't want to speak for the president or get ahead of this meeting that we are currently working on tomorrow. As you saw, the president put out a statement tomorrow that the mayor-elect will be coming to the Oval Office, and so our teams are arranging those details. I won't get into the president's thinking on it. I think you'll all hear from him directly. I also think I will just add, it speaks volumes that tomorrow we have a communist coming to the White House because that's who the Democrat Party elected as the mayor of the largest city in the country. I think it's very telling, but I also think it speaks to the fact that President Trump is willing to meet with anyone and talk to anyone and to try to do what's right on behalf of the American people, whether they live in blue states or red states or blue cities, in a city that's becoming much more left than I think this president ever anticipated in his many years of living in New York himself. Nancy.
Thanks, Caroline. This morning, President Trump accused 6 Democratic lawmakers of seditious...
All right, so this is where him threatening basically the Democrats come into play, guys. They finna ask them about it right now. Can we get the likes past 100, guys, if y'all don't mind? Double tap that screen if you're on a mobile device, or click those 3 dots, hit that thumbs up, and most definitely subscribe to the channel if you're new. She most definitely talked on Trump signing the Epstein bill into law or whatever, and now she's finna get ready to answer this question about Trump allegedly threatening the Democrats, guys.
This morning, President Trump accused 6 Democratic lawmakers of seditious behavior punishable by death. Just to be clear, does the president want to execute members of Congress?
Oh, wow.
let's be clear about what the president is responding to, because many in this room want to talk about the president's response, but not what brought the president to responding in this way. You have sitting members of the United States Congress who conspired together to orchestrate a video message to members of the United States military, to active duty service members, to members of the national security apparatus, encouraging them to defy the president's lawful orders. The sanctity of our military rests on the chain of command. And if that chain of command is broken, it can lead to people getting killed. It can lead to chaos. And that's what these members of Congress who swore an oath to abide by the Constitution are essentially encouraging. We have 1.3 active duty service members in this country. And if they hear this radical message from sitting members of Congress, that could inspire chaos, and it could incite violence, and it certainly could disrupt the chain of command. These three members of Congress, I will also add, knew exactly what they were doing. You look at Alyssa Slotkin. She's a former member of the CIA. Mark Kelly was a captain in the U.S. Navy. Maggie Goodlander was a naval officer. And notably, she is also the wife of Joe Biden's national security former advisor, Jake Sullivan. And so these members knew what they were doing. They were leading into their credentials as former members of our military, as veterans, as former members of the national security apparatus to signal to people serving under this commander-in-chief, Donald Trump, that you can defy him and you can betray your oath of office. That is a very, very dangerous message. And it perhaps is punishable by law. I'm not a lawyer. I'll leave that to the Department of Justice and the Department of War to decide.
But the president has frequently, but Caroline, can I just follow up? The president and the vice president, for that matter, have accused the other side of encouraging political violence. Isn't that exactly what the president is doing when he says that members of Congress should be killed?
Why aren't you talking about what these members of Congress are doing to encourage and incite violence? They are literally saying to 1.3 million active duty service members not to defy the chain of command, not to follow lawful orders.
Actually,
every single
can refuse an illegal order, which is
they're suggesting that the president has given illegal orders, which he has not. Every single order that is given to this United States military by this commander-in-chief and through this chain of command, through the Secretary of War, is lawful. And the courts have proven that. This administration has an unparalleled record at the Supreme Court because we are following the laws. We don't defy court orders. We do things by the books. And to suggest and encourage that active duty service members defy the chain of command is a very dangerous thing for sitting members of Congress to do. And they should be held accountable. And that's what the president wants to see. Phil.
Thank you. Ambassador Mike Huckabee had a meeting with Jonathan Pollard, a former U.S. citizen who was convicted and spent 3 decades in jail for selling state secrets to Israel. Did the White House know that that meeting was going to happen? Does the administration condone it?
The White House was not aware of that meeting, but the president stands by our ambassador, Mike Huckabee, and all that he's doing for the United States and Israel.
You said that the president was going to do what was right for U.S. citizens, regardless of whether they lived in blue or red states. I'm curious if there's any chance in tomorrow's meeting with Mayor-elect Mamdani that he will be able to convince the president to abandon that promise to cut off federal funding to New York City.
Look, Phil, we'll see how the meeting goes tomorrow, and I'll let the president speak for himself. Natalie.
Thank you, Caroline. What did the president mean when he called reporter piggy?
Look, the president is very frank and honest with everyone in this room. You've all seen it yourself. You've all experienced it yourselves. And I think it's one of the many reasons that the American people reelected this president, because of his frankness. And he calls out fake news when he sees it. He gets frustrated with reporters when you lie about him, when you spread fake news about him and his administration. But he also is the most transparent president in history. And he gives all of you in this room, as you all know, unprecedented access. You are in the Oval Office almost every day asking the president questions. And so I think the president being frank and open and honest to your faces rather than hiding behind your backs is frankly a lot more respectful than what you saw in the last administration, where you had a president who lied to your face and then didn't
wow.
speak to you for weeks and hid upstairs and didn't take your questions. So I think everyone in this room should appreciate the frankness and the openness that you...
Hold up, guys. We got more than enough people to double tap that screen, guys. We got to get these likes up. If you're on a mobile device, double tap that screen. We got 486 votes on the poll and only got 95 likes. Let's get the likes all the way up, guys. Double tap that screen if you're on a mobile device, or click those three dots, hit that thumbs up, and most definitely subscribe to the channel if you are new.
Get from President Trump on a near daily basis.
And
go ahead.
Let's follow up.
Yes.
The Washington Post just reported that the Coast Guard has.
I'm calling on Bloomberg. Go ahead.
Caroline, thank you. Two questions for you. The New York Times is reporting that the administration is now sending a U.S. official to the G20. They are sending Mark Dillard. Can you confirm if that is true, and also explain the shift? And
I'd be happy to explain, because there is not a shift. The United States is not participating in official talks at the G20 in South Africa. I saw the South African president running his mouth a little bit against the United States and the president of the United States earlier today, and that language is not appreciated by the president or his team. The ambassador or the representative of the embassy in South Africa is simply there to recognize that the United States will be the host of the G20. They are receiving that send-off at the end of the event. They are not there to participate in official talks, despite what the South African president is falsely claiming.
On Ukraine, there have been reports that President Zelensky said, he's looking to look at the plan. There's been reports about the Trump administration proposing a plan. Can you just give an update on where Russia-Ukraine stands, and does the president plan to speak with Zelensky anytime soon, or when do you expect that?
So I'm happy to provide an update. I've seen quite a bit of reporting on the latest with Russia-Ukraine, so let me clarify and give you guys the truth on where it currently stands. President Trump has made it very clear since day one, and even on the campaign trail, that he wants to see this war come to an end. He has grown increasingly frustrated with both sides of this war, Russia and Ukraine alike, for their refusal to commit to a peace agreement. But nevertheless, the president and his national security team are steadfast in seeing this war come to an end, to end the killing and deliver on the president's promise. Special Envoy Witkoff, Marco Rubio, have been working on a plan quietly for about the last month. They've been engaging with both sides, Russia and Ukraine, equally, to understand what these countries would commit to in order to see a lasting and durable peace. That's how you get to a peace negotiation, right? That's how it worked with Israel, with respect to Israel and Gaza and all of the Arab countries in the Middle East. That's how we accomplished that historic agreement, which the UN, by the way, voted to commit to and accept this week, which was a huge monumental moment. So they have been engaged with both sides, and these talks are continuing. As always, I'm not going to litigate the details of this plan as it's ongoing and it's in flux, but the president supports this plan. It's a good plan for both Russia and Ukraine, and we believe that it should be acceptable to both sides, and we're working very hard to get it done. And I'll also add, I know Secretary Driscoll did meet with President Zelensky today. We spoke with him. He was very optimistic following that meeting, and so again, we are having good conversations with both sides with respect to ending this war. Sure. Go ahead.
Follow up on Ukraine. You said this is a good plan. So according to our sources, this proposal demands major concessions from Ukraine and doesn't demand much from Russia. So was Russia involved in drafting
Your
this?
understanding is wrong. Have you read the full plan? You haven't.
Sources said.
Yes.
So if you can give details, maybe.
You've read reporting from one side of the war, and so I want you to understand that the administration has talked equally with both sides. You have seen President Trump engage directly with both President Putin and President Zelensky. Likewise, his national security team has as well. In fact, Special Envoy Witkoff and Secretary Rubio met with some of the Ukrainians just in the past week to discuss this very plan. And so just like you saw with respect to Israel and Gaza, we are hearing out both sides of this war to understand what can you commit to end the war. And that's ultimately how we are going to get to an agreeable solution. That's what the president has directed of his team. I know there's a lot of criticism out there and a lot of doubters, but I would just remind you of the historic success that this president and his team accomplished in the Middle East. We believe that is possible with Russia and Ukraine, and we're hoping and working very hard to achieve that. Stephen.
Could you provide a little more context on what to expect tomorrow with the Mamdani meeting? Will it be in the Oval Office, or is it going to be open at least partially to the press?
I don't have any more details to read out for you on the meeting quite yet, Stephen. I know it's of great interest to you in the New York Post, but we'll keep, maybe if it opens, we can commit to letting you in. Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. It came up yesterday during a confirmation hearing for the president's pick to lead the CFTC that the CFTC currently has 0 Democrat commissioners, whereas usually it's had 2 or more. Does the president plan to appoint Democrats to financial regulators like the CFTC and SEC, or does the president feel that there shouldn't be Democrat leadership at those agencies, consistent with the administration's move earlier this year to remove Democrats from the FTC and other agencies?
I'm going to be completely honest. I haven't spoken to the president about the CFTC in quite some time, but I'm happy to check in with our presidential personnel office and see if there's any updates that we can provide you there. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. Last week on Fox News, President Trump said that we've had a lot of problems with the French. How would you describe the current relationship between France and the U.S.?
The relationship remains very strong. President Trump speaks quite frequently with Emmanuel Macron. I think they have a good working relationship, but the president is not shy to point out when he has disagreements with world leaders as well, and he's done that with respect to Mr. Macron as well. Deanna, go ahead.
Caroline, there are reports that Qatar is acting as a mediator in the Ukraine peace process. Can you confirm that, and why did the president choose that country?
I'm not going to get into further details other than what I previously shared, which I think was quite a bit of information. Brian?
Thank you, Caroline. 2 questions. We were talking about earlier in this briefing about the president's orders. You were going back and forth about what the ad said and what it didn't say. My first question is...
The ad?
The advertisement that the Senate Democrats were featured in. So my first question is, no matter what the order is, it could be to any administration official, military or otherwise, no matter if legal experts might think it's illegal, does the president expect those cabinet members, administration officials to go ahead with those orders regardless of any outside thinking or experts?
The president expects his cabinet officials in the administration to follow the law and to demand accountability and hold people accountable for their dangerous rhetoric. And I would just add that if this were Republican members of Congress who were encouraging members of the military and members of our United States government to defy orders from the president and from the chain of command, this entire room would be up in arms. But instead, it is the other way around, and I think that's quite telling. I'm going to let you all go because the president, excuse me, the president, I appreciate the encouragement this morning, this afternoon, but President Trump is about to meet in minutes with Israeli hostages who this administration freed, and so I'm going to go up to that meeting, and you will hear more about that later. Thank you.
Caroline says she up out of there, man. You know what I'm saying? She ain't got time to be talking about Trump's threat to the Democrats, guys. Here's a little bit more on the threat that he put out towards the Democrats, guys, just so y'all can get a little more understanding.
Of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. We are, because a debate, if you can call it that, broke out today over what it means and calls by the President of the United States for charges of treason against 6 Democratic members of Congress. Treason, as you might know, is punishable by death. President Trump amplified a Truth Social post calling for the lawmakers' death by hanging. This, ladies and gentlemen, is where we are. Article 92 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice says service personnel must obey lawful orders. Failure to obey lawful orders can result in court-martial. There is, however, an important qualifier. Military personnel have a duty to disobey a manifestly illegal order. That means the order's illegality must be, quote, clear and obvious. Examples: orders to target civilians, orders to falsify documents, orders to commit crimes. 6 Democrats in Congress, all of whom served in the United States military or the U.S. intelligence community, released a video to members of the military and intelligence community, and here, from that video, are the most pertinent excerpts.
Here y'all go.
Americans trust their military.
That trust is at risk. This administration is pitting our uniformed military
And intelligence community professionals
against American citizens. Right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad, but from right here at home. Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
So let's dig into this a bit. In California, the Democratic governor challenged the legality of Trump's National Guard deployments there. For a member of the military, following that order to deploy would be legal. Yes, legal. Why? Because of the order's presumptive legality and that it flowed in the proper chain of command from the chief executive of the United States on down. The lawmakers put out that video, said only illegal orders can be disobeyed. Nevertheless, Trump called the video, quote, seditious behavior at the highest level, unquote, said the lawmakers, quote, should be arrested and put on trial, unquote. And here is the repost calling for the lawmakers to be hanged.
Wow.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, by way of defense of Trump, said the Democrats told troops to, quote, disobey orders, unquote. You can judge that line of defense for yourself. There is, of course, some history here. Trump, many months ago, warned about enemies here at home. He meant Democrats in government. Listen.
We have two enemies. We have the outside enemy, and then we have the enemy from within. And the enemy from within, in my opinion, is more dangerous than China, Russia, and all these countries.
Democratic leaders in the House and Senate today denounced Trump's rhetoric, as did Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. One of the senators in the video, Lisa Slotkin of Michigan, a former CIA officer.
If you just got here, man, make sure you're double tapping the screen of your mobile device. That's how you hit that like button, or click those three dots, hit that thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new. Right now, we're going over the threats that were made to Democrats by Trump. Do y'all think he was wrong for that? Let me know.
Had this response to the president.
If fear is contagious, so is courage. And I think when a lion's share of Americans understand that it is in their own power to push back on this kind of rhetoric and this kind of threat, that's when we actually turn the tide. And I'm not going to shut up because Donald Trump is threatening me.
Starting us off tonight, north lawn of the White House, Nancy Cordes. Nancy, you had an exchange with Caroline Leavitt during today's White House press secretary briefing. Let's play that exchange.
This is the lady who was asking the questions.
The president and the vice president, for that matter, have accused the other side of encouraging political violence. Isn't that exactly what the president is doing when he says that members of Congress should be killed?
Why aren't you talking about what these members of Congress are doing to encourage and incite violence? They are literally saying to 1.3 million active duty service members not to defy the chain of command, not to follow lawful orders.
Actually, what they said is you can refuse an illegal order.
But they're suggesting, Nancy, that the president has given illegal orders, which he has not.
So the White House is
very heated debate, guys. Where do you stand on
the
this?
implication from this video, Nancy?
That's right. The case that Caroline Leavitt made today is that it isn't the president's speech that is incendiary. It is this video put out by Democrats in which she said that they incentivize the 1.3 million members of the military to disobey the chain of command, something that she said could lead to chaos, even lead to people getting killed. But there was this uproar on Capitol Hill, Major, after the president said that these 6 Democratic lawmakers should be put to death. A lot of Democrats who said that President Trump was putting them at risk, that he has supporters who are unhinged, and that he has just sent a powerful message to them that the Democrats are the enemy and that they deserve to die. The president didn't then repeat his threat, but he didn't delete it either.
And Nancy, this week alone, there is a bit of a backdrop to this. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Republican from Georgia, has said, because she has now since broken with President Trump, or President Trump broke with her, that she has been subjected to greater threats of violence. In Indiana, where the president is unhappy with state lawmakers over their unwillingness to draw new Congress.
Hey guys, we need to get these likes up past 200, man. We need 50 more people to double tap their screen or click those 3 dots and hit that thumbs up, guys. I don't care what side you on. This is an unbiased channel. We're just most definitely presenting the facts as they come in, you know, on each side. So let's most definitely get those likes up. Double tap the screen or click those 3 dots and hit that thumbs up, guys. Also subscribe to the channel if you're new. Like I said, everybody's opinion is valued. Just make sure, you know, that you be respectful to others that don't think the same as you think. Let's get those likes up.
Lines there. Members of the state Senate have said they've
Thank you for the
experienced
coffee,
threats and
Miss
swatting
America.
episodes in Indiana. These things are playing out this week. It's a live wire.
Right. And these 6 Democratic lawmakers have now been granted additional security, Major, because they anticipate that there will be a larger volume of threats coming their way. And one Democratic Senator, Chris Murphy of Connecticut, said today, we have kids. And, you know, every lawmaker is now getting on the phone with his or her chief of staff to figure out how we can better protect ourselves this weekend. So, you know, there's already a heightened state of alert. We know that over the past few years that threats to lawmakers have increased exponentially, and they argue that this is just throwing another log on the fire.
From the North Lawn, Nancy Cordes, thank you so very, very much.
But we begin with President Trump suggesting 6 Democratic lawmakers are guilty of, quote, seditious behavior punishable by death. We have CBS News team coverage on this. Willie James Inman is at the White House. Nicole Killian is on Capitol Hill. Willie, let's start with you. What are we hearing from the White House about this post?
Well, this was certainly a moment that rattled Washington earlier today. The president posting several times after this video was posted and reported on with these Democratic members who were either intelligence officers or served in the military, essentially laid out their concerns about military officials and stressing that those military officials are government officials, if they're an intelligence official, for example, don't have to follow orders that are unlawful. Now, the White House is responding. You had the president responding, saying that this is seditious behavior punishable by death, also calling them traitors and for them to lock them up and having a question mark there on the social media statement. But the press secretary had this to say earlier today as well. Listen.
The president and the
talking
vice
about,
president, for that matter, have accused the other side of encouraging political violence. Isn't that exactly what the president is doing when he says that members of Congress should be killed?
Why aren't you talking about what these members of Congress are doing to encourage and incite violence? They are literally saying to 1.3 million active duty service members not to defy the chain of command, not to follow lawful orders. Every single
can refuse an illegal order, which
they're suggesting, Nancy, that the president has given illegal orders, which he has not.
And Leavitt also added, when she was asked if the president was calling for the execution of these members of Congress, she said no. So it's important to point that out. But still, nonetheless, the president sharing multiple messages from other individuals on Truth Social, calling about for violence against some of these members of Congress. And then the president himself having these messages to say seditious behavior and punishable by death.
We're going to most definitely get to the Epstein files here in a minute. This is just more up-to-date news.
But
and we'll get to Epstein
today,
in a minute.
After the president's comments on social media, Lindsay.
Willie James Inman, thank you. CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian joins us now. Nicole, what kind of reaction are we seeing on Capitol Hill?
Well, there is certainly outrage on the part of Democrats who feel that this is certainly ratcheting up tensions and potentially even directing violence at members of Congress, which the Democratic leaders, both Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, condemned. Take a listen to what Leader Schumer told reporters a short time ago.
Chuck Schumer.
I have never seen a president or heard of a president who has done more to encourage political violence. I have asked the Capitol Police to give special protection and keep an eye on Slotkin and Kelly as well.
Oh, wow. Schumer say he done got extra security, guys. He's shaking in his boots behind what Trump said, man. Do y'all think it's that serious? Oh, wow. He say he got additional security, guys. Whoa.
Special protection and keep an eye on Slotkin and Kelly as well. Because you got to worry after the president says these things.
Have you gotten any specific threats, sir?
Not that I'm aware of.
So obviously the leader there saying he's not aware of any threats against him, but as you heard him also there say, he did call for extra
They say,
protection
yeah, it's that
for
serious. You
these
know it's
members
that
of Congress,
serious.
because keep in
Wow.
mind this comes in such a heightened environment that we are in, where we have seen an increase in political violence against the president, against members of Congress. U.S. Capitol Police has said that they are on track to see well over 14,000 potential threats against members this year alone. That would be the highest potentially that we have ever seen. And of course, keep in mind with someone like Senator Martin Kelly, his wife Gabby Giffords, no stranger to political violence after being shot at a town hall more than a decade ago. So this hits close to home for a lot of lawmakers, which is why they're quite concerned about the president's comments. That being said, Speaker Mike Johnson told reporters a short time ago these aren't the words he would necessarily use, but he did feel that that video by Democratic lawmakers was out of line.
CBS News has also learned the Justice Department is questioning the handling of the investigation into California Senator Adam Schiff. Schiff is under investigation for alleged mortgage fraud. He has denied wrongdoing and has not been charged with any crime. What are we learning?
Yeah, well, we are learning now that there may be an investigation into the investigation, if you will, or the investigators in terms of how this probe into Adam Schiff is being handled. We have learned that woman, actually a congressional candidate in California, who kind of tipped off authorities to what she claims may be alleged mortgage fraud on the part of Adam Schiff, says that she was contacted by investigators recently, but rather than asking about Schiff, they were inquiring more about the investigators, in this case, Bill Pulte, who heads a federal housing agency that has been at the forefront of leading some of these charges against other Democratic members, most recently referring a case to the Justice Department involving Eric Swalwell, the California Congressman, as well as Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York. So we tried to approach Senator Schiff today for comment, but he declined to do so.
Nicole Killian, thank you.
All right, so there was a little bit more on what Trump said, regarding those Democrats. All right, well, Hakeem Jeffries most definitely gave a speech about all of this where he called Trump unhinged. Lord, have mercy. Let's go.
Esther, he's deeply unpopular, and Republicans have failed the American people on the economy. The cost of living in the United States of America is completely and totally out of control. Republicans promised to lower the high cost of living on day one. Costs have not gone down, they've gone up. Housing costs are up. Electricity bills through the roof. Childcare costs up. Insurance costs up. And Republicans continue to refuse to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. And as a result of that, tens of millions of Americans are about to experience dramatically increased health insurance costs, such that they will be unable to go see a doctor when they need one. The Affordable Care Act tax credits expire on December 31st. Donald Trump and Republicans don't give a damn. They've done nothing to deal with the healthcare crisis that Republicans have created. We need to act with urgency now and extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. Tens of millions of people are in open enrollment right now. They've seen that their health insurance premiums, copays, and deductibles are going to increase in some instances by $1,000 or $2,000 per month. That is unacceptable, unsustainable, and it's un-American. It's time for my Republican colleagues to stop burying their heads in the sand and do something to actually make life better for working class Americans, everyday Americans, and middle class Americans, as opposed to what Republicans have done the entirety of this year, which is just to focus on making life better for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. Enough pandering to big Republican donors. Enough. Do something. Partner with Democrats to lower the high cost of living and to make life better for the American people. Questions?
Mr. Leader, one of your members last night was indicted in Florida for supposedly, allegedly using COVID relief funds from FEMA to bolster her campaign. If the Ethics Committee comes back and corroborates those claims that were made in the indictment, would you expect Congresswoman Sherfless McCormick to resign?
Sheila is entitled to the presumption of innocence like every other American. She's entitled to her day in court, and she's entitled to a jury of her peers who are going to follow the facts and be guided by the law. Thank you.
After this week of censures and back and forth over that, Congressman Don Beyer and Don Bagan introduced a proposal to increase the threshold for approving that. Is that something you would support?
Don Beyer is an extraordinary and thoughtful member of Congress. We haven't had the conversation about this issue, but I'm open-minded about what the possibilities are in terms of getting the Congress out of this repeated effort by Republicans to censure members, because these extremists in the House Republican Conference have nothing better to do. That's what this week has proven. They were forced to vote on a bill to compel the Department of Justice to release the Epstein files, and they were reluctantly supportive after House Democrats partnering with a handful of House Republicans triggered an up or down vote through a discharge petition. Other than that vote, what have Republicans done to make life better or meet the needs of the American people in any way, shape, or form throughout this Congress? The answer is nada, nothing. They've done nothing. And so all their members do is cook up these unhinged censure resolutions, literally week after week after week. That's all they do, which is why they're deeply in trouble. Donald Trump's approval rating is like 38, 39% across the board, including from Fox News. And the American people know that Democrats are the party who actually care about addressing the affordability crisis, driving down the high cost of living, fixing our broken healthcare system, extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits, and actually standing up for working class Americans. Now that is decisively clear to the American people. We've seen that in the electoral results early this month, where Republicans were crushed, shellacked, beaten down all across America, with the common thread being their extremism and our emphasis on affordability. And now we've seen that the American people are ready to throw these House Republicans out of their majority. And it's incredible to me that despite where we are, after all the talk from Republicans that they somehow had earned some big historic mandate, can't find it. Search committee has been sent out. No one can find it. It's been destroyed. That you would think Republicans would actually hear the American people in terms of their desire to work on issues that matter. And instead, we continue to see censure resolution after censure resolution after censure resolution, and they can't even succeed in censuring the people they're going after.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Are you at all concerned that the recent allegations against Democrats, such as communicating with sex offender and embezzling FEMA funds, are going to harm the momentum that your party carried out of the elections earlier this year?
We're going to continue to focus on the issues that matter for the American people. Affordability, lower the high cost of living, healthcare. We've got to fix our broken healthcare system, and that begins with renewing the Affordable Care Act tax credits, not allowing Republicans to destroy the Affordable Care Act. And we have to clean up corruption, which we are experiencing in real time. And we've got to deal with in the Congress, in the Supreme Court, and certainly with this administration, which is running the largest pay-to-play scheme in the history of the world. Here's the interesting thing
Thank you, Bubba.
about Donald Trump and the Republicans.
Thank you,
They've
Bubba.
done nothing to make life better for everyday Americans. Nothing to fix our broken healthcare system. Nothing to lower the high cost of living, but everything in the world possible to enrich themselves, their friends, and their families. That's corruption in real time, and the American people are rejecting it.
Can you talk to me a little bit more about the broader Democratic affordability agenda? You talked about the ACA tax credits. If you had the majority right now, what would you do to lower inflation, which is notoriously difficult?
Well, we need to work in a variety of different areas,
Bella.
and of course, the American people are most concerned about health care, housing, and grocery prices. And so in the next few weeks, and certainly in the early part of next year, we'll talk with a greater degree of specificity about some of the policies that we actually believe need to be implemented. But here's something that we can start with: getting rid of the Trump tariffs, which are costing the average American family thousands of dollars in additional expense per year. Get rid of the Trump tariffs. That's something that can be easily done. They should never have been put in place in the first place. It was an overreach by Donald Trump. It may get struck down by the Supreme Court, but the Congress should have never allowed it to happen, because Donald Trump doesn't have the unilateral authority to impose tariffs, but the Trump tariffs are crushing everyday Americans, and that's where we can actually start right now to make a difference in America, a country that's far too expensive, and ease some of the crushing burden that has been placed by Republican policies on everyday Americans.
Just to clarify the censure motion, but prior to the vote on Nathan's censure, it was the third time, I believe, that it had brought that censure resolution on free meals. When you say unhinged or censure resolutions, are you talking about Democratic censure resolutions?
I am talking about Republicans who have spent all year trying to censure members of the House Democratic Caucus, and they did the same thing in the last Congress. They have no agenda. Republicans have complete control of government. They have the House, they have the Senate, they have the presidency. And yet all we see, because Mike Johnson has no control over the House Republican Conference. Nice guy, but zero control over the House Republican Conference. In fact, his own president, Donald Trump, says he's got two titles. Donald Trump, President and Speaker of the House. Man, you letting the president punk you like that? Publicly?
Wow.
So there's zero control that the deputy speaker has over, talking about Mike Johnson, deputy speaker, zero control that he has over the House Republican Conference. So they're running wild. And all they are doing, because they have zero policies to make life better for the American people, is to cook up censure resolutions. Week after week after week. And that process needs to be brought under control. Do I expect that Mike Johnson is going to do it? Of course not. However, if there's a bipartisan proposal led on our side by Don Beyer, a very thoughtful member, then perhaps that is something that's worthy of consideration.
Mr. Reader, regardless of who is getting censured or not censured, these are two politicians from Florida, Mills and Shirley McCormick. You just said that she deserves for being court and presumption of innocence. In the past, the DCCC and many Democrats have gone after Mills for his serious allegations. So how do you square the difference between those two with your messaging?
What I'm suggesting is that anyone who has been indicted is entitled to the presumption of innocence. In fact, I was very clear about that when Donald Trump was indicted 4 different times in 4 different jurisdictions. And in each and every instance, I was very clear, strongly disagree with Donald Trump's behavior, his conduct, and his fitness for office. But notwithstanding my assessment of this guy, the reality was, as an American, he was entitled to the presumption of innocence in every single one of those cases, and I repeatedly made that clear. So yes, I'm applying the same standard at all times, whether it's Donald Trump or whether it's a member of Congress or whether it's the people that I'm privileged to represent, most importantly, back home in Brooklyn. At all times, every American, pursuant to the United States Constitution, is entitled to the presumption of innocence and their day in court.
I know you put your position on this in the ACA credits, but Senator Rick Scott introduced a proposal today called the More Affordable Care Act. It says it keeps the Affordable Care Act framework in place, but redirects federal funds from the subsidies to what they're calling Trump Health Freedom Accounts. I want to get your reaction to that proposal. And it seems that I'm just curious, what's the path forward to extending the tax credits from the minority? In the times that they've been extended before, Democrats were in the majority. I'm just curious if they're putting forward proposals for HSAs or Trump Health Freedom Accounts. How do you get to a conversation about extending the tax credits when it didn't turn out during the shutdown?
It's interesting to me that Rick Scott and all of these MAGA extremists in the House and the Senate proceeded with great urgency throughout the entirety of the first half of this year to pass their one big ugly bill, which included the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. And by the way, I think Rick Scott has some history with Medicaid fraud in the state of Florida, so he's no expert on health care. We ain't going to be lectured by Rick Scott about anything, but certainly not affordable health care, given his track record. But they raced to enact the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, devastated communities all across America where you have hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health centers closing in real time, including in rural parts of the country. In that same one big ugly bill, they ripped food away from hungry children, seniors, and veterans and enacted a $186 billion cut to SNAP, which also happens to be the largest cut to nutritional assistance in American history. And why did the extremists do all of this? So they could pass massive tax breaks for their billionaire donors, and they made those tax breaks permanent. So they spent the first 6 months of this year focused on subsidizing the lifestyles of the rich and shameless in their one big ugly bill, but can't be bothered to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. Even now, we're less than 45 days away from those tax credits expiring, and tens of millions of Americans, including in Florida, are about to see their premiums, copays, and deductibles skyrocket in ways that will make their health care unaffordable. So from our standpoint, this is not that complicated. We have a discharge petition. I believe it has north of 200 signatures on it. All we need is 3 or 4 Republicans to join us. And if they did so, we can discharge a bill that would extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for 3 years. Everyday Americans, working class Americans, and middle class Americans deserve the same level of certainty that Republicans decided to provide to their billionaire donors when they enacted these massive tax breaks and then had the nerve to make those massive tax breaks permanent, but can't be bothered to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. Now, we're going to work closely with our Democratic colleagues in the Senate on the vote that is scheduled no later than the second week of December on a Democratic proposal related to extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. And I expect that we're going to be in alignment. And at this point, Republicans just need to take yes for an answer. Say yes to your constituents who you're jamming up right now and who are about to suffer even more from the Republican healthcare crisis.
After the blocking of the maps by the federal court in Texas maps, do you expect any change from any of the other states like Virginia in the strategy, or is it like full speed ahead?
Our strategy is full speed ahead. We are not unilaterally disarming. We are not rolling over and playing dead. And we also have no interest in spiking the football. What we are doing is going to make sure that Donald Trump and Republican sycophants are unable to gerrymander the national congressional map in a way that will allow them to rig the midterm elections. We made that clear from the very beginning. And we are not going to take our foot off the gas pedal until we are certain that the American people are guaranteed a free and fair midterm election in November of 2026.
Congressman Byron Baker said that the censure is broken in the House. Do you agree with that conclusion? And do you see a role for yourself and Speaker Johnson to work on kind of reining in the use of it, just given how many we saw this week and the rise in them in recent years?
Republicans have broken the censure in the House of Representatives. It is broken. The extremists have broken it because they have no agenda, no vision, no plans, no legislation to make life better for the American people and address the affordability crisis that's crushing everyday Americans. And so they're obsessed with censures. But what did they not get from the results of them being destroyed across the country? The American people know electorally. The American people know they have no agenda. Why are they doubling and tripling down on this extreme censure approach? It's getting them nowhere. And so we're trying to help them out. Don Byers trying to help them out. Get out of your own way. Now, do I think that Mike Johnson, nice guy, right? But do I think that Mike Johnson has any interest in actually reining in his extreme members? Of course not. He doesn't have any control over them. You know, I think he talked about dignity and decency and things of that nature, and then all we're seeing is Republicans do the exact opposite. It's extraordinary to me. We had patriotic members of the House and the Senate have their lives threatened by Donald Trump in the most unhinged,
Here you go talking about the threats, guys.
unacceptable, unconscionable, and un-American way. Disgusting and dangerous what Donald Trump has said, and accusing patriotic members of Congress and the Senate who served this country well of treason and suggesting they should be killed. That's disgusting. But we, of course, have come to expect this from Donald Trump. What's extraordinary to me is that Mike Johnson doesn't even have the decency to distance himself from Donald Trump's death threats leveled at patriotic members of Congress. Even John Thune found it reasonable for him to say he disagrees with what Donald Trump accused members of Congress of doing earlier today. Even John Thune had the decency to distance himself from Donald Trump's remarks.
All right, so that's Hakeem Jeffries on a little bit of this and a little bit of that when it came to the threats made to Democrats, guys. All right, here goes Speaker Johnson and a couple of Republicans on what they think about it.
Along with the co-host of our fourth hour, Jonathan Lemire, we have Katty Kay in D.C. and White House correspondent for Reuters, Jeff Mason, is with us here at the table. So let's back up a little bit. President Trump, of course, accusing that group of Democratic lawmakers of seditious behavior that he says could be, quote, punishable by death. It's an all-caps claim from the President of the United States, and it comes after the lawmakers, all of whom served in the military or intelligence communities, served this country. They posted this video reminding members of the military to refuse illegal orders.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk. This administration is pitting our uniformed military
And intelligence community professionals
against American citizens. Like us, you all swore an oath.
To protect and defend this Constitution.
Right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad, but from right here at home. Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
And Willie, I thought it was fascinating watching another news channel, Chicken Hawks, who have never served in the military,
Of course.
attacking men and women that have served in Iraq, that have served in Afghanistan, that have, I'm sure, lost friends in fighting, that served this country proudly, saying what they all know: you can't follow illegal orders. But see how easy this is for Donald Trump? Everybody's talking about Epstein. Everybody's talking about record low poll numbers. And all he has to do is go on Truth Social and just say, kill senators.
Right.
Right? And so all of that, obviously, you can't ignore it when a president says kill senators. They should be hung, sedition, all this stuff. But that is how easy it is for him. Have somebody type it in, send it out, boom! You don't hear about Epstein, you don't hear about affordability, you don't hear about how young people can't get houses, you don't hear about how people can't afford health care insurance, how they can't afford groceries, how they can't afford to live, how they can't afford cars. Go down the list.
It's been a terrible couple of weeks for President Trump for all the reasons you just laid out there, especially with the new polling that he's aware of, Fox News polling this week that shows him deeply underwater on a number of issues. And as you say, he knows if he does this, if he says what he said and wrote what he wrote yesterday, that all of the people who support him on TV, on podcasts, online, and in the halls of Congress will fall in line. Right. What they're all doing, if you listen to the criticism from Republicans,
y'all continue to double tap that screen if you have not.
Speaker Mike Johnson said Democrats are encouraging troops to disobey orders.
No,
that's not true.
Just not what was said.
Mikey.
That's not what they said.
No,
and
Mikey.
Speaker Johnson twisted himself in knots
We've gotten used to
yesterday,
this.
saying, well, he's just giving a literal factual definition of what sedition is and talking about what the punishment might be for that crime.
Now, this
Speaker
was a
Johnson.
guy, I think, I can't remember, was he the one that said that he was going to be ruling by the Bible, what the Bible said?
He is, indeed.
Bible, I guess the Bible said, bear false witness against your brother. Is that what Mike's Bible says? Bear false witness, keep the illegal word out of there, so it means just the opposite
Kept the
of
white.
what Mikey knows it means?
And you had Caroline Leavitt from the podium yesterday saying that these Democrats are telling troops that they can betray their oath. No, the call was to uphold the oath,
That's
not to commit illegal acts. Let's listen.
Once again, just the opposite. They are literally saying, this is Orwellian, they're literally saying just the opposite of what is true.
Right.
They're lying to the American people. People on other news channels are lying to the American people. They are literally saying, you have to uphold your oath. The White House is saying, no, you don't, by every action that they're saying, and lying about the senators who are saying, this is about upholding your oath.
Here's what both the White House press secretary and Speaker Johnson said yesterday.
Just to be clear, does the president want to execute members of Congress?
No. Let's be clear about what the president is responding to, because many in this room want to talk about the president's response, but not what brought the president to responding in this way. We have 1.3 active duty service members in this country, and if they hear this radical message from sitting members of Congress, that could inspire chaos, and it could incite violence, and it certainly could disrupt the chain of command. And so these members knew what they were doing. They were leading into their credentials as former members of our military, as veterans, as former members of the national security apparatus to signal to people serving under this commander-in-chief, Donald Trump, that you can defy him and you can betray your oath of office. That is a very, very dangerous message, and it perhaps is punishable by law. I'm not a lawyer. I'll leave that to the Department of Justice and the Department of War to decide.
What I read was he was defining the crime of sedition.
So here is Mike Johnson, guys.
That is a factual statement, but obviously attorneys have to parse the language and determine all that. What I'm saying, what I will say unequivocally, is that was a wildly inappropriate thing for so-called leaders in Congress to do, to encourage young troops to disobey orders. I mean, think of what the threat that is to our national security and what it means to our institutions. We have got to raise the bar in Congress. This is out of control and is wildly inappropriate. And for a senator like Mark Kelly or any member of Congress in the House or Senate to be engaging in that kind of talk is to me just so beyond the pale.
So he lies so
It's
pretty.
too much.
He lies so pretty. I mean,
does it
it's
so
too easy
smoothly.
for him to lie.
Clutching the pearls.
Clutching the
all of it.
pearls,
Yeah.
the fainting couch. You know, it was very rude of those press members to be standing all around. He had a fainting couch. It was beautiful, beautiful pink satin fainting couch with all the frills. He was going to just flop over. I tell you, he was so shocked and stunned. These people are lying through their teeth. These people are lying through their teeth.
He didn't say it was just half.
It was like Joe Biden when he said fat. So anyway,
can't do that.
These people are lying through their teeth. Mike Johnson knows that this is all about what military men and women need to do to uphold their sacred oath, and that is not commit illegal actions. And they know that, and yet they keep lying through their teeth.
And running through the halls, John, without criticism for this president. You heard Lindsey Graham briefly say, no, they shouldn't be hanged. Okay, great, we've established that. But immediately going to the criticism of these Democratic members. Calling, again, not to disobey illegal acts.
It's willful ignorance, and I mean, it's obviously an extraordinarily serious moment. The President of the United States calling for the execution of lawmakers. But Joe nailed it. This is what we've seen this precise playbook before. Remember when President Trump called for President Obama to be arrested on treason charges? That was the summer when the Epstein story blew up the first time. This is exactly the playbook to distract. Let's talk about something else, anything else from what's going on with Epstein first and foremost, but also things in the economy. But it is an interesting point because this is a moment that there are service members who are wrestling with this exact question, is whether or not the orders have been given are legal. And yes, it may come that way on American streets. It's already happening now in the waters of the Caribbean. We have had a high-ranking admiral walk away and resign because of concerns about the boat strikes that the U.S. is conducting off of Venezuela, and the White House really providing next to no legal justification for any of this. They're trying to do more now, but for the President of the United States, we've seen this so many times in his first term as well, where he feels like he's cornered and he's lashing out, trying to drive the news cycle
What could be
any
so
other way.
upsetting? I'm just curious. I mean, what would be so upsetting to cause this behavior?
Well, he's trying to distract.
Yeah.
Just trying to
from what?
distract.
Like what? What?
I mean, just trying to distract. You know, the thing is,
Crazy behavior?
it always has to be the debate. We've always said this. President Trump's great keeping the debate on his ground. So before the Epstein files blew up, it was about crime. And then Epstein got him off of crime. And then the government shut down, got him off of crime. And so they were debating health care instead of crime. And of course, Republicans always lose when you debate health care instead of crime. The numbers are historically low numbers. So what does he do? He accuses Democrats of sedition and says that they should be hung. I mean, and so that's what we're talking about today. We're not talking about Donald Trump's record low approval ratings. We're not talking about the fact that Democrats are ahead by 14 points, 13, 14 points. We're not talking about all of the stupid things that his Department of Justice has done just this past week.
Or Health and Human Services.
Whether regarding Comey or whether it was Texas redistricting, where they may have cost Republicans 5 seats. So he just snaps this out, and everybody's going to follow this for a day or two and stop talking about the things that, again, show how weakened the Republican Party's position is right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's classic Steve Bannon flood the zone idea, right? That you throw out so many things that people can't focus on one thing, and you use one excessive news headline to bury something else. The thing is, for the Republicans at the moment, is that ordinary voters clearly are focused on one thing and one thing overall, and they keep telling it to pollsters, and they keep telling it every time they have the opportunity to vote in a ballot box. They're worried about prices. And we may spend a morning, as we should, because it's extraordinary for a president to suggest that members of Congress should be hung and sent to their deaths. But that is not what people around the country who are figuring out how to vote, if there was a vote coming up next week or even next year's midterms, that's not what they're thinking about. They're thinking about, how do I pay for my turkey? How much are my sweet potatoes going to cost? How am I going to pay for the cost of my kids to come and travel to see me for Thanksgiving? And this will blur because we live in this frenetic news cycle. We all know around this table that by next week there will be something else that we're talking about. And the week after that, there will be something else that we're talking about. And those news spikes we will talk about them because they are news and because Donald Trump makes news. But underneath all of that is the reality for American voters that things cost too much money and they're not loving what they're seeing, and their opinion of the president of the White House at the moment is not great.
And the Republicans are in charge.
So Jeff, tell us what's going on here and what you think happens next.
Well, I think number one, it's worth talking about this in the context of political rhetoric. It wasn't that long ago that everyone was up in arms, quite rightly, about the execution of Charlie Kirk. And now the discussion of political rhetoric allows the president to use his platform and his bully pulpit to say things like this about members of Congress. I also think it's worth remembering what happened on January 6th, when the same kind of rhetoric that the president used then when talking about overturning the results of a lawful election led to some of his supporters to build a gallows on the grounds of Capitol Hill, aimed for or with the intention of sending a message to Vice President Mike Pence. So words have actions. The president knows that words have actions. One of those actions is quite rightly what you're saying is the distraction that comes from throwing things out like this. But it's more than just words. It's very dangerous words that his people may act upon.
Yeah, and
Some of these members have security because of exactly what we're talking about here.
Well, yeah. I mean, you say this, and then you have Slotkin, who has to have around the clock security now because these things are being said. Again, all to distract. And General, I'd love to end on you and get your final thoughts and what we should be looking for as we move forward today.
Well, two things, Joe. As anyone who says this is wildly bizarre that these congressmen say this, I would say then it must be wildly bizarre that drill sergeants say it every day to new recruits, that it's passed along year after year in law of land warfare classes to make sure soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines don't obey unlawful orders. And I'd just say one last thing, if I could clarify and help everybody remember. No one in the American military swears allegiance to any individual. The oaths are not pledges of loyalty to a party, a personality, or a political movement. Loyalty is pledged to the Constitution. And officers, when they take their oath, take that pledge one step further by saying, without mental reservation. They know full well what they're being asked to do, and it may require them to stand up with courage against any unlawful authority, to stand between them and the people that they serve, not only the American public, but the soldiers that are under their command. It's critically important. It's driven hard into every single person that wears the uniform. And I personally have taken that oath hundreds of times, and it's the most beautiful kind of vow that you take as part of a professional ethos.
Wow. Retired Army Lieutenant General Mark Herdling, thank you so much for coming on this morning. He's the author of the forthcoming book entitled If I Don't Return, A Father's Wartime Journal. And still ahead on Morning
Donald Trump's presidency has been a disaster. He's deeply unpopular, and Republicans have failed the American people on the economy. The cost of living in the United States of America is completely and totally out of control. Republicans promised to lower the high cost of living on day one. Costs have not gone down, they've gone up. Housing costs are up. Electricity bills through the roof. Child care costs up. Insurance costs up. And Republicans continue to refuse to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. And as a result of that, tens of millions of Americans are about to experience dramatically increased health insurance costs, such that they will be unable to go see a doctor when they need one. The Affordable Care Act tax credits expire on December 31st. Donald Trump and Republicans don't give a damn. They've done nothing to deal with the healthcare crisis that Republicans have created. We need to act with urgency now and extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. Tens of millions of people are in open enrollment right now. They've seen that their health insurance premiums, copays, and deductibles are going to increase in some instances by $1,000 or $2,000 per month. That is unacceptable, unsustainable, and is un-American. It's time for my Republican colleagues to stop burying their heads in the sand and do something to actually make life better for working class Americans, everyday Americans, and middle class Americans, as opposed to what Republicans have done the entirety of this year, which is just to focus on making life better for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. Enough pandering to big Republican donors. Enough. Do something. Partner with Democrats to lower the high cost of living and to make life better for the American people. Questions?
Mr. Leader, one of your members last night was indicted in Florida for supposedly, allegedly using COVID relief funds from FEMA to bolster her campaign. If the Ethics Committee comes back and corroborates those claims that were made in the indictment, would you expect Congresswoman Strickland McCormick to resign?
Sheila is entitled to the presumption of innocence like every other American. She's entitled to her day in court, and she's entitled to a jury of her peers who are going to follow the facts and be guided by the law. Thank you.
After this week of censures and back and forth over that, Congressman Don Beyer and Don Bacon introduced a proposal to increase the threshold for approving that. Is that something you would support?
Don Beyer is an extraordinary and thoughtful member of Congress. We haven't had the conversation about this issue, but I'm open-minded about what the possibilities are in terms of getting the Congress out of this repeated effort by Republicans to censure members, because these extremists in the House Republican Conference have nothing better to do. That's what this week has proven. They were forced to vote on a bill to compel the Department of Justice to release the Epstein files, and they were reluctantly supportive after House Democrats partnering with a handful of House Republicans triggered an up or down vote through a discharge petition. Other than that vote, what have Republicans done to make life better or meet the needs of the American people in any way, shape, or form throughout this Congress? The answer is nada, nothing. They've done nothing. And so all their members do is cook up these unhinged censure resolutions, literally week after week after week. That's all they do, which is why they're deeply in trouble. Donald Trump's approval rating is like 38, 39% across the board, including from Fox News. And the American people know that Democrats are the party who actually care about addressing the affordability crisis, driving down the high cost of living, fixing our broken healthcare system, extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits, and actually standing up for working class Americans. Now that is decisively clear to the American people. We've seen that in the electoral results early this month, where Republicans were crushed, shellacked, beaten down all across America, with the common thread being their extremism and our emphasis on affordability. And now we've seen that the American people are ready to throw these House Republicans out of their majority. And it's incredible to me that despite where we are, after all the talk from Republicans that they somehow had earned some big historic mandate, can't find it. Search committee has been sent out. No one can find it. It's been destroyed. That you would think Republicans would actually hear the American people in terms of their desire to work on issues that matter. And instead, we continue to see censure resolution after censure resolution after censure resolution, and they can't even succeed in censuring the people they're going after.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Are you at all concerned that the recent allegations against Democrats, such as communicating with a sex offender and embezzling FEMA funds, are going to harm the momentum that your party carried out of the elections earlier this month?
We're going to continue to focus on the issues that matter for the American people. Affordability, lower the high cost of living, healthcare. We've got to fix our broken healthcare system, and that begins with renewing the Affordable Care Act tax credits, not allowing Republicans to destroy the Affordable Care Act. And we have to clean up corruption, which we are experiencing in real time. And we've got to deal with in the Congress, in the Supreme Court, and certainly with this administration, which is running the largest pay-to-play scheme in the history of the world. Here's the interesting thing.
My bad, y'all. We already seen this. I got a little family stuff going on real quick. I stepped out. I know it's done went to something else. Let's go here. You know, with the Epstein files. Let's get on the Epstein files, man. Make sure y'all double tapping that screen. I'm sorry about that, y'all, once again. Here goes some on the Epstein files, Pam Bundy, you know, and they're looking to basically conceal the names, or what they call it, redacting items within this, and something about the lawsuit that Trump got going on right now, the investigation that he has going on that could stall the release of the Epstein files.
Hayes, we are waiting tonight. The bill, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, is on Donald Trump's desk. It is ready to be signed into law after almost every Republican on Capitol Hill voted to advance it against Trump's wishes. Even House Speaker Mike Johnson ultimately voted to force the DOJ to release the Epstein files after, of course, he spent months using every procedural trick in the book to block that effort on Trump's behalf. Now, it seems Johnson expected his counterpart in the Senate, Republican Majority Leader John Thune, to grind the bill down to a halt this week with a lengthy markup process and, crucially, amendments. That didn't happen. The opposite happened. In fact, the Senate passed it with unanimous consent, and Johnson is still mad about that.
I'm deeply disappointed in this outcome. I think I've been at the state dinner. I don't know. I was just told that Chuck Schumer rushed it to the floor and put it out there preemptively. It needed amendments. I just spoke to the president about that. We'll see what happens.
So do you think he may veto it? You say you spoke to the president?
I'm not saying that.
Is he supportive of it in its current form?
We both have concerns about it, so we'll see.
Does the president have concerns about the Epstein files coming out? Really? You probably don't need Mike Johnson to tell you that. Trump is widely expected to sign this bill, although who knows? And it's not, of course, because he's had some change of heart. It's because if he did veto it, his own party would likely help to override him. This battle is lost, but as for the war, now comes the next phase of the apparent cover-up. Much of this part will rest with none other than Attorney General Pam Bondi, who will have 30 days to release those files after the Epstein bill becomes law. Files that Bondi and the DOJ claimed basically didn't exist in a 2-page memo last summer, or files that they say were of no public relevance. That memo said there would be no more investigations or releases of information on Epstein. Nothing to see here.
Our memo on Epstein clearly points out that there was no client list. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. Our memo speaks for itself, and we'll get back to you on anything else. Nothing about Epstein. I'm not going to talk about Epstein.
Well, that was then. Today, Bondi did a 180 saying the government was opening investigation after all. In doing so, she gave a hint of how the new chapter of this apparent cover-up will work from here.
What changed since then that you launched this investigation?
Information that has come for information. There's information new information, additional information, and again, we will continue to follow the law, to investigate any leads.
Would you limit the new investigation to just those named persons that the president talked about, or is this a broad, open-ended investigation?
I would refer to the Deputy Attorney General's post that he put out on X, and we're not going to say anything else on that because now it is a pending investigation in the Southern District of New York.
I mean, the number 2 of the Department of Justice tweeted, so there you have it. It's a classic, well, there's an active investigation, can't talk about it. I mean, we've been watching politicians run that play for literally generations. But you have to ask, what active investigation exactly? Oh, right, the one that Donald Trump ordered up on social media to investigate only Democrats mentioned in the Epstein files released so far. A pending investigation Bondi can now cite as a reason to keep the public in the dark over the Epstein files, to avoid releasing at least some of them. That's after she told the public for months there was no one left to investigate, although previous to that, she said they had this bombshell file she was going to release. So that's how the Epstein cover-up will work, apparently. An investigation run by a Department of Justice that has been completely lawless and dishonest throughout this administration, especially when it comes to Epstein and his convicted accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell. That appears to be the plan anyway. The question now is whether it will really work to Trump's advantage. He is a lame duck president with falling approval numbers. I mean, every day brings some new low point in some poll. His party and his base are erupting in infighting that we really haven't seen before at this point. There's increasingly only one issue where they're united these days, and that's releasing the Epstein files. That's when Soup Sang, senior political correspondent for Zateo. Lisa Rubin's a senior legal reporter at MS Now, and they both join me now. Lisa, I have you here right now. So how do you understand what the Attorney General and DOJ are going to do if and when this bill gets signed into law tonight?
Well, I think one of the things that the Attorney General is going to do is determine what she is going to withhold and what she is going to redact, because the Epstein bill comes in 3 parts. First part gives you a number of categories of documents that are compelled to be released by Congress under the bill. But the second category is all of the exceptions to that the Attorney General and her sole discretion can rely upon in either redacting or withholding information. And as you just noted, they sort of reverse engineered an investigation, it appears, because one of those exceptions is where it would interfere with or compromise an active ongoing investigation or prosecution. And so you have to ask yourself, is there really new information here that would justify a new investigation? Or did somebody smart read the text of the bill and realize that the out that they have always wanted was built into this bill as a feature, not a bug?
There's a mention of what the Deputy Attorney General posted on X. I'm going to ask you that in a second. I want to ask Swin this first. So interestingly tonight, Swin, they called a lid on the press pool, the White House press pool, which means no more official business, no more public events, which is notable because he's got the bill and could sign it into law. Donald Trump tends to like to do these things in public. But I'm reading from your reporting here. On Tuesday afternoon, the president suffered a blow to his ego and to his aura of personality cult, no doubt. The resistance to Trump's agenda and his narrative is having an effect, which is why he and people will resort to an increasingly blatant array of dirty tricks to protect their man in Washington and Mar-a-Lago. How do you think this goes next?
Well, the Trump-Epstein cover-up will continue until morale improves. Look, this is a government that is built almost entirely on bad faith in policy and practice, and this is no different here. Look, just to dig in on the point that you guys were talking about earlier, we don't have to speculate. If you talk to senior Trump administration officials, they will tell you, whether privately or otherwise, if you ask them, look, do Trump, Pam Bondi, and the DOJ, is the investigation that the president ordered up, they're now doing, is this a way that, you can keep certain files that Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel very much do not want to be released to Congress or the American people under lock and key? They will say words like, of course. This
Thank
is
you,
something
Reed.
we've been talking about for days, if not weeks, in terms of like a failsafe. Look, Trump expended a ton of political capital and lost when he tried to crush this vote in the House, and then it went on to the Senate, and they of course passed it. And him and his DOJ and Pam Bondi have built in there, and this is by design, a escape hatch and a plan B that is a much better insurance policy than Mike Johnson could ever possibly give them.
When Bondi was, that we were all cracking up today at the new information. I don't know, information, the habada. But then at one point she says, I refer you, again, I gotta say, the thing about this is, under ordinary procedure, like this is how all Department of Justice is. We don't comment on ongoing investigation. These folks have completely blown that up. They talk about anything whenever they want. They
order investigations.
They order investigations, and then they talk about the ones they've ordered.
Right.
So what was she referring to when she said Todd Blanche?
I'm going to tell you what I think she was referring to. 6 days ago, Todd Blanche got into a Twitter war of sorts, or an X war, with George Conway, the conservative legal commentator, who was criticizing his questioning of Glenn Maxwell on the basis of the documents that were released last week by House Oversight, saying that those documents undermined the transcribed interview that Todd Blanche took.
And basically saying, like, how could you
rely on that?
And your questioning was so incompetent because you didn't ask about all these things that are in this.
Correct. And here's the response. George, you've never been confused for a trial lawyer, and these kind of posts explain why. And then beyond the insult, when I interviewed Maxwell, law enforcement didn't have the materials Epstein's estate hid for years and only just provided to Congress. What he seems to be saying in that is, I didn't have that information because it's not available to the Department of Justice. And time will tell whether that is a good faith statement or not. But that appears to be what Pam Bondi was referring to when she's talking about the Deputy Attorney General's ex post.
We should note that the Epstein estate countered that and said we were never requested for this. We didn't hide anything. We turn over anything as soon as we need it. Swin, I was thinking about when Lisa was talking about the redactions. Every journalist, I think, has had this experience, or many have, and if you haven't had it personally, you have a colleague, of FOIAing something, and then sometimes you get sued, sometimes they delay, but sometimes they say, here, and you get it, and you're like, great, and it's just like blacked out, like some sort of sick joke. And I keep thinking about that moment as we see what they're going to do with this law that now compels them to disclose.
They have practically openly signaled that that is what they are going to do, or at least some version of it. Trump himself, when he lied that he had previously said that I'm okay, I don't care, the House can vote to pass this thing this week, he built into that Truth Social post, we will hand over whatever we are legally required to do, whatever they are legally allowed to have. Trump and his administration have a vastly different definition of the law than a lot of other normal-brained people on this planet. If you talk to people or some individuals who planned this from the onset during the transition, I'll never forget one of the things that one of them said to me when I asked them,
Thank you, Money
operating legal principle of the second Trump administration, and they said, what are you going to do about it? That is the legal principle they were working with, the raw power of they control the Justice Department, they control the White House, they are going to decide what Donald Trump does or does not want the American people to see, and you're going to have to live with that. That is the stance they're taking, whatever public relations and face-saving Donald Trump is engaged in right now.
All right, guys. All right, so that was a little bit on them trying to redact things out of the Epstein files, right? So after the Democrats caught wind of what basically was going on, they want the unredacted. They want the full thing unredacted. Check this out.
Democrat leadership making remarks. Let's listen into that here on Live Now from Fox. What do we got here? Okay, thank you everybody. Good afternoon. And I'm proud to be joined by Senators Klobuchar, Merkley, and Gallego. So, yesterday the House and Senate finally agreed to pass legislation to compel Donald Trump to release the Epstein files. A few hours after it passed the House, I came to the floor and got unanimous consent for the Senate to immediately pass that bill. I told Leader Thune that I was going to come to the floor and ask for a unanimous consent request that deemed the bills passed. And at about 5, before the first vote, and at about 10 of 5, he said he wasn't going to block it. That was good. But enough with the Republican delay, dithering, and dilly-dally. This morning, the Senate finally received the Epstein bill. It's finally on its way to the president's desk. That's right. After months of waiting, months of Republican delay, so many failed attempts from Trump to hide the truth, the Epstein File Transparency Act is headed to the desk. It's a huge step for justice, for the brave and unrelentingly courageous victims. They were amazing. It wouldn't have happened without them. We salute them. It's also a great day for Americans, because Americans wanted to see the truth. Let's be clear, though, this wouldn't have happened without Democrats like the people with me today. But we are not done. No way. Our promise to the victims and to the American people is this. This will not and cannot be the end of the work. We'll keep the pressure up, pressure for the president to sign, and then pressure on the DOJ to release the full, unredacted files. No hiding, no game playing, no covering up. Pressure to make sure the documents are released in their entirety and not warped by a corrupt DOJ who's hell-bent on hiding the truth, bending the law, and protecting Trump. Trump's own Justice Department that told him he was in the files. You remember this. We know he's in there. He knows he's in them. What the heck is he hiding and been hiding for so long? It's time for the truth. This bill is a command for the president to be fully transparent, come fully clean, and provide full honesty to the American people, even if he doesn't want to. And just like we did with this vote, and for months on end, Democrats will fight for full transparency, nothing less. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Leader Schumer. Courtney Wild, 14 years old when she was sexually abused by Epstein. Danielle Bensky, 17 years old when Epstein sexually abused her. Her mom had a brain tumor, and he told her that he could help her mom, but only if she abided by his demands, including recruiting other girls. He told her, I can use it to help you, or I can make it really difficult for your mother. As she said recently, it's a call to action. We're standing up for so many victims of sexual assault. As a former prosecutor, I can tell you that's what this is about. It is also about trust. When Donald Trump and the Republicans promised the American people time and time again, whether it was about bringing down costs, not true. Whether it was about making changes that help people, not true. But whether it was about releasing these Epstein files, now we'll find out the truth. Donald Trump knew that there was overwhelming numbers of votes coming in against him, and at that moment, he made the decision that he would say that he wanted the vote to go through. At that moment, when Senator Schumer made the decision to come forward, there was no one who would stand up and say, nope, we shouldn't have them released. And I thank Senator Schumer for doing this. The House discharge petition materialized because there were the votes to override his veto. So now is the moment of truth. One, he has to sign it, But two, and most importantly, when we look at what the Attorney General of the United States, who is running a Justice Department that literally when Donald Trump orders them by Truth Social or in person to do something, they do it. Drop charges, they'll do it. Pardon their friends, they'll do it. It is literally a snap of their fingers. Make sure that you charge a Federal Reserve governor or the Attorney General of the state of New York or the former FBI director. We're there, we'll do it. That's what's been going on. So right now, we're facing a moment because of these faux investigations that she is now claiming are reopening. Now we're going to find out, are they really going to release the files or not? And we are ready to stand up for victims like Danielle and so many others in this country.
The Epstein files have always been about full accountability for the perpetrators and justice for the victims. And Donald Trump, when he campaigned, he said, I'm going to release these files. It became increasingly clear that that wasn't going to be the case. So in July, 25 Democrats introduced the Epstein Files bill. Not one Republican would co-sponsor it. 4 months ago. Then 2 months ago, Leader Schumer introduced that bill as an amendment on the Defense Authorization Act. And 51 Republicans tabled it. And every Democrat said, no, let's debate it and let's pass it. That's just 2 months ago. And then here we were yesterday evening, we called for all 100 senators to join in the vision of equal justice under law, and they did. And that's a great stride forward, but it is not the finish line. Because we know that Trump is not going to release those files. We are going to press him like hell. But everything we know about Donald Trump is he will obscure and delay. And there's a second set of files in the Treasury Department. $1.5 billion in suspicious activity reports. Senator Wyden and his finance team led an investigation with some bipartisan support. Those files provide huge information that will complement the information from the Department of Justice. Now, what happened yesterday evening was a really huge tribute to grassroots Americans from the far right, from the middle, from the left, all saying we believe that powerful men abusing and raping teenage girls should be held accountable. It's a vision throughout the political spectrum. And it was certainly a huge stride forward for the victims who so courageously stood up and shared their stories. But let's keep working toward the finish line when there will be actual accountability for the perpetrators and full justice for the victims.
Senator Gallego.
Thank you. Well, today we've won the battle for justice. We won the battle for these poor women that were victimized repeatedly, both by these awful elite men, as well as the Trump administration by trying to cover up every step of the way accountability. But it's just a battle. There is still war that needs to go on. We should not be in any doubt that this president is going to take every opportunity, along with his allies, along with Attorney General Pam Bondi, to slow down, to cover up, to confuse, because at the end of the day, the truth will come out and it will hurt this administration. So I just encourage everyone that was involved from the fight from day one to make sure that we do not fall for the same traps that he's going to continue to put down. These women deserve justice. These women deserve to be treated like any other U.S. citizens. And just because it was elite men from New York City or from Mar-a-Lago or from wherever in the world, they deserve to be brought to trial and to justice just as much as anyone else.
Thank you,
The president needs to show that he is for us and not for them, and stop trying to stop a real open investigation and a real understanding of what happened with the Epstein files. Thank you.
Okay, questions? Yes.
What's your reaction to this proposal from Health Committee Chairman Bill Cassidy to set up HSA accounts
to help people afford the insurance plans on the Obamacare marketplace. Could that be a potential common ground? Is that
Look, we insist on that the ACA tax credits have to be renewed and extended, period. If Cassidy's proposal, as I understand it, replaces them, looks like it's privatizing health insurance, and it looks like it's really problematic, and particularly problematic to do very quickly. Yes.
Liz Schumer, Republicans have said that Democrats have been too singularly focused on President Trump's role in the Epstein files. What would you say to that criticism, and are you equally concerned about the names of Democrats or people that donated to Democratic causes that could pop up?
We think every name should come out, everything. There should be no cover-up. Yes, this late. Yes, you haven't called on you.
About the Russian sanctions bill, are you hopeful that it will finally get a vote this month now that Trump said he's okay with it? And if it does become law, what do you think should be the focus? Do you think there should be 100% tariffs on Turkish goods, Chinese goods, Hungarian goods? What would be the most effective?
Look, the bottom line is I think there are 87 co-sponsors or sponsors, including Leader Thune and myself. We've wanted to move the bill for a long time.
Appreciate it, Mr. Jack Time.
Putin has to be told in every way that he cannot be just a bully and overrun Ukraine. Okay? No, you gentlemen. Yeah.
Leader Schumer, given the federal court's decision in Texas yesterday to strike down their gerrymandered maps, are you boosted by Democrats' chances nationally going into 2026?
Look, I'm boosted by Democrats' chances nationally to begin with. Why? Because the American people are on our side. The issue of health care has been a dramatic cleavage between Democrats fighting to prevent these premiums from going up and Republicans standing in the way. Even we've seen this over and over again. The American people know we're on their side. They know the Republicans are opposing them, and that's going to serve us very well in 2026. Thank you.
All right, so we heard what the Democrats had to say. They say they want it unredacted, guys. Hold on. Let's go right here to Jeffrey Epstein's ex-girlfriend. And she describes the alleged incident with Trump, guys. Check this out.
A former Sports Illustrated model who dated Epstein in the early 90s has spent time with both Epstein and Donald Trump together. In one disturbing alleged incident, which Williams went public with last year before the presidential election, Williams says Trump groped her in front of Epstein at Trump Tower in 1993.
Oh, wow.
Here's what she told our son, Surfati, when she first broke her silence.
The second he was in front of me, he pulled me into him, and his hands were just on me and didn't come off. Then the hands started moving, and they were on the side of my breasts, on my hips, back down to my butt, back up, sort of. Then they were just on me the whole time, and I froze.
Williams also claimed that Epstein and Trump looked at each other and smiled during the alleged incident, which Williams says she now believes was coordinated and, quote, some kind of weird, twisted game.
Yeah.
Trump denied Williams's allegations through his campaign at the time, which said in part, quote, it's obvious this fake story was contrived by Kamala Harris's campaign. And Stacey Williams is out front now to speak out for the first time since the uproar over Trump's handling of the Epstein case. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us tonight. As you know, Epstein is dominating the news once again, and his relationship with Trump is under scrutiny. While you were dating Epstein, can you tell us how close these two men were?
They were best friends. I dated Jeffrey for a period of more or less, I think about 4 or 5 months. And the only friend that he would mention every time we saw each other or had a phone conversation was Donald, and he would share a lot of anecdotes. I have plenty of anecdotes. And yeah, they were very close, and they were up to no good.
And how did Epstein talk about Trump? Sort of what was the quality of those anecdotes and how he described him?
There was a time when he mentioned that he had to check in on him because he was unwell and very upset about something that had happened. I remember because he was late to pick me up and he was explaining why he was late. They were just, it was such a long time ago, but it was just that was his bro, that was his wingman. It was clearly, I'd hear about Ghilan and I'd hear about Jeffrey. And I met Ghilan in his house. She would come wafting in and out, the home in New York. So he was clearly just someone that he talked about all the time. And again, I met Jeffrey the second time and we started dating based on the reintroduction that happened at the Plaza Hotel at a Christmas party in 1992 that Donald Trump threw. And they were very, very close.
So let's talk about this incident, alleged incident in 1993, where you say that Trump groped you in front of Epstein. I do want to note that CNN has spoken to 3 friends of yours who confirmed that you told them about this alleged incident over past decades. Can you tell me more about what happened that day and particularly how Trump and Epstein interacted?
Yeah, before I get into the details of what happened, which, obviously I told you guys and I've shared with multiple outlets, the specifics of the assault that happened, I want to point out that I was polygraphed before I did all this by one of the most renowned examiners in the world. Michael Wolff has hundreds of hours of interviews with Jeffrey Epstein where Jeffrey confirmed to Michael what the two of them did to me long before I came out and told you all of this. So those are 2 critical data points that you need to have, and now I'll walk you through what happened. I was dating Jeffrey. He was always talking about Donald. It was his bestie and everything, and he was joking about how Donald thought I was hot, and Donald thinks I'm this or whatever, wants to talk to you, and he was telling me this as we were taking a walk down Fifth Avenue one day. And he said, let's stop in and see him at his offices. So we went up to his office in Trump Tower. And within a couple of minutes, Donald was outside of his door. And his hands were all over me. They were on my breasts. They were on my butt. They were on, my hips, up and down, while the two of them just kept having a normal conversation. I don't remember exactly what was in the conversation. Again, this was, we're talking this is 93 now. It was something about, it was irrelevant. It was like, oh, Stacey's career's on fire. She just did Sports Illustrated again, blah, 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 blah. And they were back and forth, smiling and grinning and carrying on a conversation while Donald ran his hands all over me. And when that happens in broad daylight in someone's office and an assistant's walking back and forth, you're in shock. If it happens in a dark alleyway, right, you defend yourself. But when it's hidden in its brazenness like that, which is Donald Trump's forte, you go into shock. So I froze, and it was over and very quickly. It was a few minutes, and then we got back in the elevator, and Jeffrey's energy had changed. He was like seething. He was enraged. He wouldn't make eye contact with me. And then we got out on the street on Fifth Avenue, and he looked at me and he just started yelling at me, saying, "Why did you let him do that?" And he was so enraged. And then I remember thinking, like, why did I? I felt like I was coming back into my body at that moment, and I was confused. So that's the story of the assault.
And I do just want to note, Stacey, that Trump has denied these allegations, which you are well aware of. And I know at times you've referenced videos, which we have not confirmed the existence of. But I know that you felt that this was coordinated later when you look back on it. What was it that made you draw that conclusion?
Well, I was sort of known in the industry for being somewhat combative with photographers who would expose themselves or do inappropriate things, or even guys who would touch or harass on the streets. And Jeffrey was aware of that. And I think he was excited. I think the gist in my mind, given what he knew and the way it played out, was, hey, I'm going to deliver this person to you who's actually not going to let you get away with what you do. And I did, because I froze. Like I said, when it's hidden in its brazenness like that, you freeze. And, you know, he's a master of that. So, I mean, he talked about it, right? He talked about pussy grabbing on the Access Hollywood tape.
And tonight, if you're aware, President Trump has filed this libel lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal over its reporting that there was this note bearing Trump's name as a signature and an outline of a naked woman that was included in a 50th birthday album for Epstein in 2003. A note that also depicted an imaginary conversation between the two men. And part of it reads, quote, Donald saying, "We have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yes, we do. Come to think of it, Donald, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me that the last time I saw you." And then finally, Donald, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. Trump called that letter fake. He said it was out of character for him because he never wrote a picture or drew a picture in his life. Wrote a picture, I think he said. No, it's not his kind of language. Based on your time with both men, does that sound out of character to you?
What, are you kidding me? I know what they were up to together. It happened to me. I was polygraphed. I have the post-assault postcard with a love note. So I have the receipts. Where are Donald Trump's receipts? Where are they? I know what they're up together, and I know what that means. It's very clear. It wasn't baking or fishing.
Well, Stacey Williams, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us tonight. Thank you.
All right, so that was Stacey Williams, you know, accuser of Trump, as well as an ex-girlfriend of Epstein, guys. Whether you believe her or don't believe her, she most definitely came out and spoke about the whole entire situation. All right, so now we got Epstein's lawyer, guys. He spoke on this situation to Nancy Grace. Let's check this one out.
You have landed in lawyers that Dershowitz was not involved. That said, Alan, you have landed in the middle of a stink bomb on this case, and part of it is because
This is Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer, guys. His lawyer while he was alive, basically speaking with Nancy Grace about this whole entire situation, guys.
First words on Epstein's conviction. Remember that conviction in the early 2000s where he pled guilty to solicitation of a minor? Remember that? Many people call that, but you are saying, no, it was not.
Well, I just think we have to get our words right. Means very young, 13, 14, 12. The woman that the girl that he admitted to having sorts on was 17 years and 10 months. That's terrible, and it's a crime, and it's underage, but it's not. So you can't say he's been convicted of. Not that it makes such a difference, because he was accused of terrible, terrible things, including relatively young people. But it's bad enough without distorting the reality. And so what he did was horrible. What he did was inexcusable. And the moment I found out that he did it, I terminated my friendship with him. And by the way, the newly released documents prove that I was telling you the truth when I said that. Jeffrey hated my guts. In his emails, he talked about me being mentally ill. He talked about me being a terrible, terrible lawyer. If I had ever done anything wrong, the first thing he would have done was reveal it to people, but he didn't. So I'm glad these new emails are coming out, and I'm glad that President Trump has finally agreed to urge people to vote to have everything come out. The day I was falsely accused, I announced I want everything out. I want the FBI to investigate me. I waive all privileges because I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, and therefore everything would exculpate me, as of course it has. So if you're innocent, you should want everything out. And if you're guilty, well, maybe you shouldn't.
No, I'm very curious as to why this has been such an obstacle in D.C. Why these files have been, it's like hide the ball. From the very beginning, we've gotten conflicting statements. We've been told by Bondi they're sitting right here on my desk. I've got the client list, but then claiming, oh, there is no such thing. Do they think we're idiots, Alan?
Well, there is a list of FBI names that the FBI got in interviewing the victims, and there is such a list. I've seen it. and the names have been redacted. Some of the names have been made public. Being on the list doesn't necessarily mean you're guilty. It means somebody has accused you. But there is such a list. There's no Jeffrey Epstein client list. He didn't have a little book in which he said, this woman is going to go to this guy, this woman is going to go here or there. There's no such list like that. But the FBI does have names that they're suppressing. And the judges, this is the important point. Judges have been suppressing information. They have sealed depositions, including in my case, and I'd love to see all those depositions. I made motions in court to get them revealed, but the courts have said no. The courts have said we're not going to release this. So the courts have been suppressing information. The government has been suppressing information. Now I think we're going to see the government information out there, but the court information is still going to be suppressed. And I think that your program, other programs, have the right to go to court and say, look, please, the public has the right to see this. Let's unseal these depositions.
You know, Alan, having built so many cases, I can't remember them anymore. I can't keep count of them. But I'm confounded in the face of so many allegations and so many victims that I believe, victims of Epstein, your former client, victims of his friends, child trafficking, girls as young as 12 years old, and we've been able to document that from all around the world, from Turkey, from the stands, all going, many of them anyway, to Ireland. There have to be witnesses, Alan. There has to be documentation of their flights, their ferry rides. What I don't understand, Alan, is why at this juncture, in the face of overwhelming evidence, there is not a full-on investigation of who these men are. Epstein's dead. Can we now focus on other offenders? Why are they being protected? And why is there not an ongoing federal investigation? I'm tired of hearing about politics, Alan. I'm tired of hearing about what Trump wants and Bondi wants and the Democrats want, the Republicans want. Why isn't there a federal investigation finding the names of these alleged perpetrators and prosecuting them?
Look, I agree with that. If they're guilty, they should be prosecuted. But at the same time, all information should be released about whether or not these accusations are true, false, or somewhere in between. We have to hear all sides of the issue. I wrote a book called Guilt by Accusation. You can't find somebody guilty just because they're accused. They have to have a due process right to defend themselves. But I think every name should be revealed. Everybody who's been on the island, everybody who's been on the airplanes, everybody, then they have to explain what they were doing on the island, what they were doing on the airplane, what they were doing in the house. I've done that. I've explained that completely. And everything I've ever said has been completely corroborated by the release of the recent emails. So I think mine is a case in point. If you're innocent, please, please push to have everything revealed. If you're guilty, I understand you're a little bit reluctant to have the truth come out. But if you're innocent, you want the truth to come out.
Well, Alan, I appreciate that. I do. And I agree with you. But I am not suggesting guilt by accusation or trial in the media. What I'm saying is, I keep hearing about, there is no client list. Well, it's just like a witness list. A police report or an allegation by a victim is not a client list. You, the prosecutor, have to go and create the witness list. You have to investigate. I'm not asking for trial by media. I'm saying, why, Alan, is there not an investigation into these claims? Why are we talking about there's no client list? Well, go make one. Investigate. Find out who the men are, when they were there, who are their victims. These victims are now adult women. They can convey what happened to them. I don't understand what's the holdup.
I agree completely. Look, I've seen it. I've held it in my hand. There is an FBI report in which the names are redacted, in which victims say, these are the men, A, B, C, D. They identify them by name, and the court has required that all those names be redacted and crossed out. They shouldn't be. I want every single name released, and I went to court to try to get every name released, but the people whose names are there obviously don't want them released. But at this point in time, every name should be made public. Every accusation should be made public. And then the people whose names are on the list should have an opportunity to explain, to deny, to disprove. But right now, nobody benefits from suppression. And that's why I'm so upset at courts, federal judges keeping names out. They shouldn't be doing that. I want to see that FBI unredacted list of the names, and then we can judge whether the allegations are true or false.
Which leads me, Alan, to the question, why? Normally, as you know, in a criminal proceeding, the state doesn't have to prove motive. But I'm curious because I think it will lead me to more wrongdoing. Why do you believe that these names have been suppressed? As you say, redacted, but I think they're being suppressed.
They are. They are being suppressed, and they're being suppressed by federal judges. So let's get the federal judges to release every name of everybody and release the name of information that might undercut the claims. Let me give you an example. There's a woman named Sarah. She said videotapes of Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Richard Branson, and others having. So, okay, so she sent hundreds of emails to the New York Post making those allegations. Then she admitted she made the whole thing up. So if you're going to release the accusations, you also have to release the admission that she made it up. So as long as we get the whole picture, innocent people shouldn't be concerned. Guilty people should be concerned. But that's the process of criminal justice, to distinguish between the innocent and the guilty. So please, let's release everything. I have an interest, obviously, because I'm innocent and I want everything out there. Other people have an interest in suppressing it, but the interest in suppressing it shouldn't prevail. The public has the right to know.
Alan, I'm sure that you can understand why all of us, the regular people who are not on the inside of this investigation like you have been, are stymied. We don't understand how, and you know how I feel about politics, Alan. We've discussed it before. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Green, a Democrat, don't care. But we were told these would be released. Then there was a sudden about face as soon as Trump got into the White House. And Bondi has been the spokesperson. The stark reversal on that in the last hours is encouraging, but I'm still left with a feeling we're never going to know the truth, and that the onus is on the victims themselves to somehow put together their own investigation to pursue.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be on the victims. It should be on the government. The government should be producing everything. They should be going to court and saying the public interest outweighs any privacy interest at this point, and we want to see everything out, but we haven't seen that happen yet. And you're right to ask the question, why? What I'm so pleased is that President Trump has now said he does want to make sure the Republicans vote to release at least the congressional material. But I also want the government to go in and try to release the judicially suppressed material. Then maybe we can get close to everything. What I want to see is every single document, every videotape, every call, everything out there. You know, not lawyer-client privileged material if they have a special status, but everything else should be out there.
Alan, what's the difference between the congressional documents and the judicial documents? Because as of right now, only congressional documents are being released.
That's right. So the judicial documents are depositions. I was deposed for hours and hours. My false accuser was accused for hours and hours. Those have been suppressed, along with everybody else. In the Ghislaine Maxwell case, in other cases, the judges have suppressed, and they've also suppressed grand jury minutes. Now, I don't think grand jury minutes are going to give us very much, because prosecutors, all they have to do is send somebody into the grand jury to describe the evidence. But the depositions are very substantial, and they involve people very close to Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not at liberty to disclose the names of these people because they're sealed. But some of them are extremely close to Epstein, and it would be very, very important to have those documents out there. And I think the judges should release those documents. And they're more, in many ways, at least as important.
Alan, before we move on to our other guests for this evening, I'm very, very disturbed by you, and I'm circling back to it, parsing words. I just want to be clear. Your former client, Jeffrey Epstein, pled guilty to solicitation and procurement of a minor, of minors, for whether they're 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, as was the case there, is still a minor in the eyes of the law. And as you know, in other cases, girls as young as 12 have been sent to Island. That has been documented. Now, in the case where he pled guilty, the victim was not 12, but still a minor, Alan.
So people should say he is a convicted offender. He is convicted of having, but they shouldn't say he's a convicted, because when you combine the two words, convicted, which means he's either pleaded guilty or has been found guilty, and it suggests that he has been found guilty after due process of having 12, 13, 14 years, and that isn't true. What he did is bad enough. I'm not trying to defend him, because it really doesn't make much of a difference. All I'm suggesting is that if you want to be credible, let's get it all straight, and let's make clear that he never pleaded guilty or was found guilty of anything that, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association and other medical sources, would label him. You could disagree and say it's a question of words. I don't think it makes a big difference.
Not disagree with the black and white definition of, which is an attraction to. Let me break that down. That means the girl doesn't have, she may not have, she's around the age of 13 or younger, typically speaking. But at this juncture, to parse words about whether he's convicted or convicted child or procuring is largely a false argument at this point. What do you think is going to happen, Alan, now? Will we ever get the truth?
I think so. I think we're going to get the truth. I think there's so much public pressure and there's so much pressure from Congress that I think ultimately we're going to see all the emails, we're going to see the videotapes, if there are videotapes, and I know there are at least some videotapes of what happened in the living room of his house, because he arranged those videotapes with the police in Palm Beach County because somebody had stolen material from him. So I want everything out there, and I think that the public has been pushing for that. You've been pushing for it. Other people have been pushing, and I think you're going to prevail. I think in the end, everything will come out. It will exculpate innocent people like me. It will inculpate guilty people, and I don't know who they are, but whoever they are should be found guilty. And I think in the end, the truth will prevail, because I'm interested, as a professor, I'm interested in the truth. As an advocate, obviously, I'm interested in getting the best possible conclusion for my clients. But as a professor, I'm interested in the truth, and I want the whole truth to come out. And I think it will, and I think it will because of people like you pushing so hard to get everything out there. You should keep pushing. Don't stop.
Alan Dershowitz, representing one nasty devil after the next. Thanks for being with us tonight, Alan. Thank you.
Also represent some innocent people occasionally. Represented Natan Sharansky, I represented Bill Clinton, I represented Ted Kennedy. They're all innocent, but my representation, I also, as I said, represented many women who have been abused and threatened, and so.
Say Ted Kennedy.
Okay,
I think I would leave him out of that mix. That said, good night, sir.
Good night.
Absolutely, I agree, IGT. She says if Trump really wanted to release those files, he could have did it at any time, guys. All right, so we heard about the threats that Trump allegedly made, on the Democrats. We most definitely heard what Mike Johnson thought about it. We also heard from Hakeem Jeffries how he thought about it. We heard from Caroline Leavitt how she felt about it. We also heard from Epstein's ex-girlfriend, who says that Trump was most definitely part of what's going on. We've seen the emails and all. Okay, so I asked in the chat, do y'all think the files will be released in their entirety without redactions? 77% of y'all said no, and 23% of y'all said yes, which means they believe that they won't be released in their entirety. Basically without redactions, that they may be released, but it's going to be redacted. That was out of 2.8K votes, man. Shout out to everybody that voted on the poll, man. I wish that many people would have hit the like button, but hey, man, this is YouTube, and you can't force these people to do nothing, even if you want them to. You know, we also heard from this guy, who is Epstein's lawyer. He has went on record to say that Trump had absolutely nothing to do with anything. You know, that's his stance. But we also found out that he's been implicated within these files, guys. So, yeah, man, he facing some lawsuits, or was facing some lawsuits or criminal charges of his own behind this whole situation, into which where he says that he's absolutely innocent. Well, I fulfilled everything in my title. I also brought y'all a little bit extra. I hope y'all enjoyed the show. I enjoyed y'all. Make sure that if you haven't double tapped on that screen to hit the like button, you do so now, and also make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new, because this is everything news, where I report on everything news, and I most definitely keep y'all up to date with everything I see going on in the news. Right now, the biggest thing in the news is Trump and these Epstein files, guys. Yeah, man, it's crazy. But once again, like I said, I brought y'all everything that I have seen regarding this matter, as well as everything that I have seen basically on what's going on with Trump and the Democrats and this alleged threat, guys. All right, so with that being said, it's time for me, hold on. Shout out to my old subscribers as well as the new subscribers, everybody who has subscribed to the channel. Shout out to all my members, and most definitely shout out to all of my moderators, guys. Shout out to anybody that sent a gift. I most definitely appreciate that. Shout out to anybody that sent a super chat or a super sticker. I appreciate that as well. Shout out to Vaughn for sending that trophy. I appreciate you. All right, so with that being said, it's time for me to make my grand exit. I hope y'all enjoyed the show. I hope y'all got caught up on some information that you may have heard of, and did not know everything it was that was going on with it. As well as I brought y'all some new information that y'all may not have known anything about. You know what I'm saying? We got let's get somebody on a rocket ship at the end of the show talking about find something else. No, you go find something else. You go find you another place to tell the content creator to find something else. We'll holler at you. You just got deported. You know what I'm saying? We don't like haters over this way. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what's wrong with that guy. He probably been talking trash the whole time. I ain't even see it. But I caught you right then, man. You know what I'm saying? We just deported one, guys. Anyway, I will catch y'all later. Y'all make sure y'all stay safe out there. And like I always say, Sidewalk Gang, checking out. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Make sure y'all stay tuned. Turn your notification bells on to all if you subscribe to the channel, so that you don't miss anything when everything news goes live. I catch y'all later. Y'all be safe.